Chapter 1. Elena. My phone screen was cracked right down the middle, but I could still read the headline perfectly. It was bold, it was black, and it made me want to throw up. Dante Valenti released. Conviction overturned. I dropped the phone on the carpet. It landed face up next to an empty bag of spicy chips and a pile of unwashed laundry. I stared at it like it was a bomb that had just started ticking. He was out. He was not supposed to be out. The lawyers said 20 years. The news said 20 years. Every legal expert on the planet had said Dante Valenti would rot in that maximum security cell until his hair turned gray and his teeth fell out. That was the only reason I felt safe enough to pick up a pen in the first place. I stood up and paced the length of my tiny studio apartment. It took exactly 4 steps to get from the bed to the kitchen counter. I did it again. And again. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a bird trapped in a cage. 3 years early. He was out 3 years early. I looked at the stack of letters sitting on my nightstand. They were tied together with a blue ribbon because I was a sentimental idiot who thought playing with fire was romantic as long as the fire was behind bars. There were dozens of them. 2 years of my life written in black ink on cheap paper. In those letters, I was not Elena the invisible librarian who tripped over her own feet and apologized to furniture when she bumped into it. I was Sophia. Sophia was confident. Sophia was witty. Sophia did not spend her Friday nights eating junk food and reading romance novels alone. Sophia wore silk dresses and drank expensive wine and knew exactly what to say to a man like Dante Valenti. I walked over to the mirror hanging on the back of the bathroom door and looked at myself. This was the reality. I was wearing an oversized t-shirt that had a mustard stain on the hem. My hair was thrown up in a messy bun that was more messy than bun. And then there was the rest of me. I turned to the side and sucked in my stomach. It did not help much. I was soft. Everywhere. My hips were wide enough to knock things off tables, and my thighs rubbed together when I walked. I had curves that refused to be hidden no matter how much black I wore. Dante Valenti was a don, a king of the New York underworld. I had seen pictures of the women he used to date before he went inside. They were sharp. They were angular. They looked like they were made of glass and diamonds. They were beautiful and dangerous. I was just Elena. I looked back at the phone. The news anchor was talking about a technicality in the evidence. Corruption in the police force. I did not care about the details. All I cared about was the fact that the most dangerous man in the city was walking free right now. And he had my address. Well, he had a P.O. box address. But a man like him did not need much time to turn a P.O. box into a street name and an apartment number. He probably had people for that. Scary people in suits who did not ask nicely. He would come looking for Sophia. He would expect the siren from the letters. The woman who teased him and challenged him and promised him things she had no business promising. Instead, he would find me. The thought made my blood run cold. It was not fear of violence. Not really. In 2 years of writing to him, he had never threatened me. He had been possessive and intense, and sometimes his words were so dark they made me shiver, but he had never been cruel. No. I was terrified of the look on his face when he saw me. I could picture it perfectly. He would knock on the door. I would open it. He would look down at me with those cold, dark eyes I had studied in newspaper clippings. He would scan me from head to toe. And then he would realize he had been tricked. He would see the soft, shy girl hiding in her baggy clothes, and he would laugh. Or worse, he would just look disappointed. He would look at me like I was a waste of his time. Like I was a fraud. I could not handle that. I could survive a lot of things, but I could not survive the humiliation of Dante Valenti looking at me and seeing nothing he wanted. I grabbed the duffel bag from the top of my closet. Dust fell down onto my face, but I wiped it away and unzipped the bag. I had to go. I did not know where. Just away. Maybe I could go to my cousin's place in Jersey. Or maybe I could just drive until my beat-up Honda ran out of gas and start a new life as a waitress in a diner where nobody knew who the Valenti crime family was. I started throwing things into the bag. Underwear, socks, my toothbrush. A couple of romance novels because I clearly had not learned my lesson about living in fantasy worlds. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped my deodorant twice. Why did I stop writing? That was the question he would ask if he found me. Why did I stop? I stopped 2 months ago when the rumors started that his appeal might actually work. Panic had set in then, but it was nothing compared to the blind terror I felt now. I had ghosted a mafia don. I had just stopped sending letters. No explanation. No goodbye. Just silence. He was not a man who was used to being ignored. In his last letter, he had asked me why I was taking so long to reply. The tone was not polite. It was demanding. He said he owned my words. He said I did not get to be silent unless he told me to be. I shivered and zipped the bag shut. I needed to move. Every second I wasted standing here feeling sorry for myself was a second he could be using to track me down. I grabbed my coat and wrapped it around myself tight. I checked the peephole on my front door. The hallway was empty. It was just the cracked beige paint and the flickering light bulb that the landlord refused to fix. I took a deep breath. You can do this, Elena. Just get in the car. Drive. Do not look back. I opened the door and stepped out into the hall. I turned to lock the door behind me, my keys jangling in, my trembling fingers. I was going to be fine. I was just overreacting. He probably had a million things to do now that he was free. He had a criminal empire to run. He had enemies to kill. He probably had forgotten all about the girl who wrote him letters about loneliness and favorite colors. I was nothing to him, just a way to pass the time. I turned around to head for the stairs, and then I stopped, because I had forgotten one thing. I had forgotten about the debt. My father was a gambler, a bad one. He owed money to everyone in this city, but he owed the most to the Valenti family. That was the only reason I knew Dante's name in the beginning. That was why I started writing. I thought maybe if I humanized myself to him, if I made a connection, he might go easy on my dad when he got out. It was a stupid plan. A naive plan. But it was the only plan I had. But now he was out. And my dad still owed the money. If I ran, Dante would not just let it go. He would go after the only leverage he had. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text from my dad. Elena, are you watching the news? He is out. You need to come home. I am scared. I stared at the screen. My dad was a mess of a human being, but he was the only family I had. If I ran, Dante would find him. And if Dante found him and I wasn't there to plead his case. I dropped the duffel bag. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. I could not run. I stood there in the dim hallway feeling the tears prick at the corners of my eyes. I was trapped. I was absolutely trapped. If I stayed, Dante would find me. He would realize Sophia was a lie. He would see me for exactly what I was. But if I left, he would hurt my father. I let out a shaky breath that sounded more like a sob. I picked up the bag and walked back into my apartment. I closed the door and locked it. Then I slid the deadbolt home. Not that a deadbolt would stop Dante Valenti. I walked over to the kitchen counter and opened the cabinet. I pulled out a fresh bag of chips. My hands were still shaking as I ripped it open. I sat down on the floor right in the middle of the room. I was not going anywhere. I was going to sit here and wait for the wolf to come and blow my house down. And when he did, I just hoped he would make it quick.
Chapter 2. Dante. The air outside the gate tasted like diesel and wet concrete. To anyone else, it probably smelled like the armpit of New York City. But to me, it smelled like oxygen. It smelled like mine. I stood there for a second, just letting the heavy steel gate clang shut behind me. That sound had haunted my sleep for 5 years. The grinding of metal on metal. The lock sliding home. It was the sound of my life being put on pause. but now I was on the other side of it. 5 years. I adjusted the cuffs of the suit Mateo had brought for me. It was charcoal gray, custom fit. It felt strange against my skin after wearing rough prison blues for so long. The fabric was too soft, too expensive. I felt like a wolf dressed up for a funeral. A black SUV idled at the curb about 20 feet away. The window rolled down and Mateo looked out. He looked older. There was more gray in his beard and the lines around his eyes were deeper. The last 5 years had not been kind to him either. Running the family while the Don was in a cage was a heavy burden. I walked toward the car. My legs felt stiff. Every step was a conscious decision. I was used to a cell. I was used to a yard that was 10 paces by 10 paces. The world suddenly felt too big, too open. Mateo got out of the car before I reached it. He did not smile. We did not do smiles. He just nodded and opened the back door. "Welcome home, Dante." I didn't answer him. I just slid into the back seat. The leather was cool and smooth. The smell of the interior, conditioned air and new car smell, hit me instantly. It was silent inside. Soundproof glass. The noise of the city, the sirens, the traffic, it all disappeared. Mateo got in the front passenger seat. The driver was a kid I didn't recognize. He looked nervous. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel, and he kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror like I was going to reach forward and snap his neck. Drive. That was the first word I had spoken as a free man. My voice sounded rusty, rough, like gravel grinding together. The car pulled away from the curb smoothly. We merged into traffic heading back toward the city. The skyline rose up in the distance, gray and jagged against the cloudy sky. My city, my kingdom. Mateo turned in his seat to look at me. He had a tablet in his hand. "We have everything set up at the penthouse. The staff has been vetted. Security is tripled. We have a meeting scheduled with the capos at 8 tonight. The Russians have been pushing into the docks while you were away. We need to make a statement." I looked out the window, watching the graffiti-covered walls of the highway blur past. I heard him, but I did not care. The Russians could have the docks for all I cared right now. They could burn the whole city down. I was not thinking about territory. I was not thinking about money. I was not thinking about the rats who had planted the evidence that put me inside. I was thinking about her, Sophia. The name was a ghost in my head. A phantom that had kept me sane when the isolation threatened to crack my skull open. I reached into the inside pocket of my suit jacket. My fingers brushed against the folded piece of paper I had kept there. It wasn't a letter. It was the envelope from the last one she sent. The postmark was from 2 months ago. 2 months. 61 days of silence. For 2 years, she had been my clock. Her letters arrived every Tuesday like clockwork. They were my only window to the outside world. She wrote about mundane things, the weather, the books she was reading, the people she watched in the park. But it was the way she wrote that hooked me. She was smart, sharp. She didn't treat me like a criminal or a celebrity. She teased me. She challenged me. She had this way of stripping away the bullshit and seeing the man underneath. I had fallen in love with her mind before I even knew the color of her eyes. And then she stopped. The day the news broke that my conviction was being overturned, the letters stopped coming. I had waited. I had paced my cell like a caged animal waiting for mail call. Every day the guard would walk past my bars and shake his head, and every day a little more of my humanity chipped away. Why? That was the question that burned in my gut. Why did she stop? Was she scared? Did she find someone else? Was the idea of me only attractive when I was locked away safe and unable to touch her? Mateo was still talking. He was listing numbers, profit margins, casualties. I held up my hand. He stopped talking instantly. The silence in the car was sudden and heavy. I don't care about the Russians, Matteo. Matteo blinked. He looked confused. But Dante, I said, I don't care. Not today. I pulled the envelope out of my pocket and held it up. The paper was worn soft from how many times I had held it. The handwriting on the front was elegant. Looping, cursive. It looked like the handwriting of a woman who knew her worth. I want you to find this. Matteo squinted at the envelope. A P.O. box? I nodded. Find out who owns it. Find out where they live. I want a name. I want an address. And I want it within the hour. Matteo looked at me like I had lost my mind. We are in the middle of a war, Dante. You have been gone 5 years. The family needs to see you. They need to know the king is back on the throne. I turned my head and looked him in the eye. My stare was a physical weight. I saw him flinch. I saw the driver look away terrified. The king is back, and the king wants what is his. Matteo swallowed hard. He took the envelope from my hand carefully, as if it were a bomb. Is this a loose end? Someone we need to take care of? I looked back out the window. A loose end? No, she wasn't a loose end. She was the rope that had pulled me out of the dark. And then she had cut it. She ghosted me. The realization made anger coil in my stomach like a snake. I was Dante Valenti. People did not ignore me. People did not walk away from me until I gave them permission. She thought she could play games. She thought she could pour her soul out to me on paper for 2 years, and then just disappear because things got real. She was wrong. I don't know yet, I said quietly. Just find her. Matteo pulled out his phone and started typing furiously. He snapped a picture of the address and sent it to our contact at the post office. We had people everywhere. Police, judges, the postal service. There was no such thing as privacy when you had my kind of money. I leaned back against the headrest and closed my eyes. I tried to picture her. In my head, Sophia was tall. She had dark hair and eyes that could cut glass. She was confident. She had to be confident to write the things she wrote. She had confessed desires to me that would make a priest blush. She had told me she wanted to be owned. She had told me she was lonely, but she didn't want just anyone. She wanted someone who could handle her fire. I could handle it. I was going to consume it. The car slowed down as we hit the city traffic. I watched the people walking on the sidewalks. They looked so small, so fragile. They lived their lives worrying about rent and groceries and weather. They had no idea that wolves walked among them. I checked my watch. 30 minutes had passed. Matteo's phone buzzed. I opened my eyes instantly. He looked at the screen and then he looked at me. His expression was unreadable. We got a name. Tell me. Elena. Elena Rossi. The name meant nothing to me. It wasn't Sophia. I felt a spike of irritation. She had lied about her name. Of course she had. Smart girl. But not smart enough. Address? Matteo hesitated. Dante, you know that name, right? Rossi? I frowned, thinking. Rossi? It was a common name, but then it clicked. Frankie Rossi, the gambler? Matteo nodded. That's his daughter. I let out a low, humorless laugh. The sound frightened the driver enough that the car swerved slightly. Frankie Rossi owed the family $500,000. He had been dodging payments for 6 months. I had ordered his legs broken a week before I got arrested, but the order never went through because of the indictment. So Sophia, Elena, was the daughter of a degenerate gambler who was drowning in debt to me. It all made sense now. The letters, the connection. She probably started writing to me to beg for her father's life, to try and gain favor. But then why stop? If she was writing to save her dad, she should be writing more now that I was out. She should be at my doorstep begging, unless she was scared. Unless she realized that she had gotten too close, that she had given me too much. I remembered a letter from a year ago. She had written, "I feel like I'm invisible to the world, Dante. But when I write to you, I feel seen. I feel like you are the only one who really knows me." Was that a lie too? Was it all a manipulation? The anger in my gut turned into something colder, something harder. "Where is she, Matteo?" "She has an apartment in Queens. The address is here." I didn't take the phone. I just stared at the back of the driver's head. "Take us there." Matteo turned around fully now. "Dante, listen to me. We can send some guys to pick her up. You don't need to do this yourself. You need to go to the penthouse. You need to shower. You need to prepare for the meeting." I leaned forward. My voice was a whisper, but it filled the car. "I am not sending boys to do a man's job. She is mine to collect." Matteo sighed. He knew better than to argue when I had that tone. He tapped the divider and gave the driver the address. The car made a U-turn. I sat back and watched the city roll by. Elena Rossi. The name tasted different than Sofia. It sounded softer. It didn't matter what her name was. She had opened a door. She had invited me in, and now she was trying to slam it shut in my face. She was going to learn very quickly that you don't slam doors on Dante Valenti. I touched the breast pocket of my jacket again, feeling the crinkle of the envelope. I wasn't going there to hurt her. Not really. I wasn't going there to break her legs like her father deserved. I was going there to get what I was owed. She had given me her mind in those letters. She had given me her soul, and now I was coming for the rest of her.
Chapter 3. Elena. The library was usually my sanctuary. It smelled like dust and vanilla, and aging paper, which was arguably the best smell in the world. It was quiet. It was safe. And most importantly, it was a place where people generally left me alone. But today the silence felt heavy. I was shelving the returns in the history section, which was tucked away in the back corner of the building. It was the darkest part of the library where the fluorescent lights flickered and hummed like dying insects. I liked it back here. It was easy to disappear between the towering metal shelves. I was on my knees on the thin gray carpet trying to wedge a massive book on the Civil War onto the bottom shelf. It was a tight squeeze. My skirt was riding up, and the waistband of my tights was digging into my stomach. I felt gross. I felt messy. I had barely slept the night before. I had spent 12 hours sitting on my floor staring at the door waiting for it to be kicked in. When the sun came up and I was still alive, I realized I had to go to work. If I didn't go to work, I would lose my job. And if I lost my job, I couldn't pay the rent. And if I couldn't pay the rent, I would have to move back in with my dad, which was a death sentence for my mental health. So here I was, hiding in the stacks, jumping at shadows. I shoved the book into place and let out a huff of breath, pushing a loose strand of hair out of my face. My glasses were sliding down my nose. I adjusted them with a sweaty finger. "You are being paranoid, Elena." I told myself that for the 100th time today. Dante Valenti was a busy man. He was a millionaire, a criminal mastermind. He probably had a list of enemies a mile long. Why would he care about a shy librarian who wrote him a few letters? He had probably forgotten about Sofia the second he stepped out of prison. I grabbed the next book from my cart. The air pressure in the aisle changed. It was a subtle thing, a shift in the atmosphere. The hairs on the back of my arms stood up. The humming of the lights seemed to fade into a dull buzz. The silence that followed was not the peaceful silence of a library. It was the silence of a forest when a predator walks into the clearing. I froze. My hand was still gripping the spine of the book. I didn't want to look up. My instincts were screaming at me to stay down to curl into a ball and pretend I was a pile of laundry. But I couldn't. I slowly turned my head. He was there. He was standing at the end of the aisle. The pictures in the newspapers did not do him justice. They made him look cold and distant. In person, he was overwhelming. He was tall. So tall that he made the metal shelves look like toys. His shoulders were broad, straining the fabric of a suit that looked like it cost more than my entire education. He wasn't moving. He was just standing there with his hands in his pockets, watching me. I forgot how to breathe. My heart stopped beating, and then started again with a violent kick against my ribs. It was him, Dante. He had found me. I scrambled to stand up. It was not graceful. My foot caught on the edge of the cart and I stumbled, grabbing the shelf for support. A book slid off the cart and hit the floor with a loud clap that echoed like a gunshot. I flinched. He didn't. He didn't even blink. I stood there, pressing my back against the books, trying to put as much distance between us as possible. I pulled my cardigan tighter around myself, trying to cover my chest, trying to hide the curve of my hips. I felt exposed. I felt huge and awkward and utterly ridiculous. He took a step forward. His shoes made no sound on the carpet. He moved like a big cat. Fluid. Dangerous. I opened my mouth to speak, but nothing came out. My throat was dry. He stopped 3 feet away from me, close enough that I could smell him. He smelled like winter, like cold air and expensive cologne and something dark and spicy like tobacco. He looked down at me. His eyes were almost black. They were intense, intelligent, and terrifying. He scanned my face. He looked at my messy hair. He looked at my glasses. Then his gaze dropped. He looked at my body. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole. I knew what he was seeing. He was seeing the soft stomach, the thick thighs, the fact that I wasn't wearing shapewear because I didn't think I would be meeting a mafia don today. I braced myself for the sneer. I waited for the look of disgust. But it didn't come. His expression didn't change. His eyes just darkened slightly. He looked at me the way a starving man looks at a banquet. Intense. Hungry. Possessive. Sophia. His voice was deep. It rumbled through the floor and vibrated in the soles of my feet. It wasn't a question. It was a statement. I swallowed hard. My name is Elena. I know what your name is, he said. He took another step. He was in my personal space now. He was towering over me, blocking out the light. I know who your father is. I know where you live. And I know that you stopped writing to me. The accusation hung in the air. I tried to laugh. It came out as a nervous squeak. I got busy. Work has been crazy. You know how it is. Books don't shelve themselves. I was babbling. I was making jokes to a man who could probably kill me with his thumb. I was an idiot. He tilted his head slightly, watching my mouth move. You got busy, he repeated. His tone was flat. He didn't believe me. Yes, I lied. Just life. He reached out. I flinched, squeezing my eyes shut, expecting a hit. I felt his fingers brush against my chin. His skin was rough, warm, and calloused. He tilted my face up, forcing me to look at him. I opened my eyes. He was staring right into me. You are a terrible liar, Elena, he said softly. You didn't get busy. You got scared. I didn't. You ran, he cut me off. His thumb brushed over my bottom lip. The sensation sent a jolt of electricity straight down my spine. You realized who I was. You realized that the things we wrote about, the things you confessed to me, were not just ink on paper. They were real. And that terrified you. He was right. God, he was so right. I'm sorry, I whispered. My voice was trembling. I shouldn't have lied to you about who I was. He dropped his hand, but he didn't step back. I don't care about the name, Sophia, Elena. It doesn't matter. I know your voice. I know your mind. He paused and his gaze raked over my body again, heavier this time. And now I know the rest of you. I felt my face heat up. I'm not what you expected. No, he agreed. You're not. My stomach dropped. Here it comes. The rejection. You are better, he said. My brain short-circuited. What? I expected plastic, he said, his voice rough. I expected one of those women who look like they would break if I touched them too hard. But you... He stepped closer until the toes of his expensive shoes touched the toes of my scuffed flats. You are soft. You are real. I stared at him, completely bewildered. Was he mocking me? We have business to discuss, Elena, he said, abruptly shifting gears. The tenderness vanished, replaced by cold authority. Business? I echoed. Your father. The air left my lungs. The fantasy of the moment shattered. Right. My dad. The debt. That was why he was here. Not because he liked my letters. Not because he thought I was real. He was here to collect. I know he owes you money, I said, my voice gaining a little bit of strength from the panic. He's trying to get it. He just needs more time. He has had time, Dante said coldly. He has had 5 years. The debt is overdue, and I am not a patient man. I can help, I said quickly. I have some savings. It's not much, but... Dante laughed. It was a dark sound. You work in a library, Elena. Unless you have $500,000 stuffed in your mattress, you cannot help. $500,000. I felt dizzy. I knew it was a lot, but I didn't know it was that much. My dad was dead. There was no way we could pay that. Please, I whispered. Don't hurt him. He's sick. He's an idiot, but he's my dad. Dante watched me. He seemed to be calculating something, weighing my value. I am not going to hurt him, Dante said. Not today. Relief washed over me so strong my knees almost buckled. Thank you so much. But, Dante added, and the word was like a steel trap snapping shut. The debt must be paid, one way or another. I don't understand, I said. If we can't pay money... There are other currencies, Dante said. He stepped back, giving me room to breathe for the first time in minutes. He buttoned his suit jacket. Get your things, he said. I blinked. What? Get your purse, your coat. We are leaving. Leaving? Where? I'm at work. I can't just leave. Dante looked at me like I had just spoken a foreign language. You think I care about your shift schedule? Get your things, Elena. You are coming with me to discuss the terms of your father's debt. I can't go with you, I said, backing up until I hit the shelf again. I don't know you. You're a criminal. Dante's eyes narrowed. I am the man you wrote to for 2 years. I am the man you told your darkest secrets to. You know me better than anyone. He reached out and grabbed my hand. His grip was firm but not painful. It was possessive. Now come, he said, or I send my men to pay your father a visit right now. The threat hung in the air. I looked at his hand wrapped around mine. I looked at his face. He wasn't bluffing. If I said no, my dad would pay the price. If I said yes, I didn't know what would happen. But looking at Dante, feeling the heat radiating off him, I knew one thing for sure. My life as I knew it was over. Okay, I whispered. Good girl, he murmured. He pulled me away from the safety of the books and led me out of the shadows. I stumbled along behind him, my hand lost in his, trying to keep up with his long strides. We walked through the main reading room. People looked up. They saw the giant man in the suit leading the mousy librarian away. They looked confused. I kept my head down. We walked out the front doors and the cold city air hit my face. A black SUV was waiting at the curb, engine idling. The driver jumped out and opened the back door. Dante didn't let go of my hand. He guided me into the back seat. I slid across the leather, feeling like I was climbing into a hearse. Dante got in beside me. The door slammed shut, locking us in. Where are we going? I asked, my voice small. Dante looked at me. He reached over and tucked a stray lock of hair behind my ear. His touch lingered on my neck right over the pulse that was hammering under my skin. "Home," he said. And as the car pulled away, I realized with a terrifying jolt of clarity that he didn't mean my home, he meant his.
Chapter 4. Dante. The silence in the back of the SUV was loud. It was filled with the sound of Elena trying to breathe without making noise. She was pressed up against the door as far away from me as she could possibly get. If she pushed any harder, she would phase right through the metal and tumble out onto the highway. I sat in the corner of the seat, my legs spread, taking up more than my fair share of the space. I watched her. I had been watching her for 5 minutes straight, and I was not bored yet. She was a mess. A beautiful, chaotic mess. Her hair was falling out of that clip on top of her head, strands of brown gold hitting her cheek. She kept blowing them away with little puffs of air instead of tucking them back. Her glasses were crooked, sitting slightly lower on one side than the other. Her hands were clenched in her lap, the knuckles white gripping the strap of her worn-out purse like it was a lifeline. But it was the rest of her that held my attention. In prison, I had been surrounded by hard lines, steel bars, concrete walls, hard men with sharp elbows and sharper shanks. Everything was gray. Everything was cold. Elena was the opposite of all of that. She was soft. She was wearing a cardigan that was 3 sizes too big, but even that couldn't hide the curve of her hip where the seatbelt dug in. I could see the plushness of her thighs pressing against the leather seat. She looked like comfort. She looked like something a man could sink into and never want to leave. I remembered the women I used to date. The models, the actresses. They were all angles and bones. Holding them was like holding a bag of antlers. Elena looked like she would feel like heaven. She shifted nervously, pulling the hem of her cardigan down over her knees. She caught me looking. Her cheeks turned a shade of pink that I wanted to taste. "Stop staring at me," she mumbled. She looked at her knees, not me. "I have been staring at concrete for 5 years, Elena," I said. My voice was low, rasping against the silence. "I think I have earned the right to look at something beautiful." She made a sound that was half laugh, half snort. "Beautiful. Right. I'm a librarian covered in dust who hasn't been to a gym in 3 years. You don't have to mock me." I frowned. The irritation spiked in my chest again. She really believed that. She really thought I was making fun of her. I leaned forward. The movement made her jump. I reached out and caught her chin, turning her face toward me. Her skin was warm, soft as velvet. Her eyes widened behind the lenses of her glasses. They were brown, not a flat brown, but a rich, warm color like whiskey in a glass. "I do not mock," I said. "I do not waste words. If I say you are beautiful, it is because you are. If you are too blind to see it, that is your problem, not mine." She stared at me, her mouth slightly open. She looked confused, flustered. "You're crazy," she whispered. "Maybe," I admitted. "Solitary confinement does things to a man's head." I let go of her chin, but I didn't lean back. I stayed in her space, smelling the vanilla scent of her shampoo. It was intoxicating. "Where are we really going?" she asked. Her voice was shaking less now. The anger was starting to bleed through the fear. Good. I liked the fire. I remembered the fire from her letters, the way she would argue with me about politics or philosophy. I wanted to see that fire in person. "I told you," I said. "Home." "Your home," she corrected, "which is kidnapping, by the way. Just so we are clear on the legal terminology, you are kidnapping me." I smirked. I prefer the term asset relocation. "I am not an asset," she snapped. She turned in her seat, facing me fully now. "I am a person. I have a job. I have a cat." "Okay, I don't have a cat. but I was thinking about getting one. You can't just take me. Your father owes me $500,000, I said calmly. Do you have $500,000, Elena? She deflated. The fire went out, leaving her looking small and tired again. No. Does your father? No. Then we have a problem, I said. In my world, debts are paid. If they are not paid with money, they are paid with blood, kneecaps, fingers, sometimes lives. I watched the color drain from her face. I hated doing that to her, but she needed to understand the reality of the situation. She needed to understand that I was the only thing standing between her father and a closed casket. I am offering a third option, I said, which is you, I said simply. You come with me. You stay with me. You belong to me until I decide the debt is settled. Her eyes went wide. Belong to you? Like a slave? I laughed. It was a dark rumble in my chest. No, Elena, not a slave. A guest, a very permanent guest. For how long? As long as it takes. She looked at the door handle. I saw the calculation in her eyes. We were moving at 40 miles an hour through city traffic. Don't even think about it, I said. I locked the child safety locks before you got in. She glared at me. You are infuriating. I have been called worse. I bet you have. I bet psychopath is high on the list. Top 5 definitely. She crossed her arms over her chest. The cardigan pulled tight, outlining the swell of her breasts. My gaze dropped. I couldn't help it. My body was waking up in ways it hadn't in years. The reaction was instant and painful. I wanted to reach out and touch her. I wanted to pull that oversized sweater off her shoulders and see the skin underneath. I wanted to know if she was as soft all over as she looked, but not yet. She was terrified. If I touched her now, she would shatter. I needed her to trust me, or at least I needed her to stop looking at me like I was going to eat her. Although eating her was definitely on the agenda eventually. Tell me about the letters, I said, changing the subject. She stiffened. What about them? Why did you use a fake name? Sophia, she looked out the window. Because I'm nobody. Elena Rossi is just the girl who checks out books and eats lunch alone in the break room. Sophia was interesting. Sophia was brave. You are brave, I said. You walked into a prison through words and tamed a monster. That takes courage. She looked back at me. There was a sadness in her eyes that made my chest ache. I didn't tame you, Dante, she said softly. I just distracted you. No, I said. You saved me. The words hung in the air, heavy and true. The car began to slow down. I looked out the window. We were pulling up to the curb in front of my building, the Valenti Tower. It was a fortress of glass and steel rising up into the gray sky. Matteo was already waiting by the entrance with 2 of my soldiers. They looked tense. They were scanning the street, watching for threats. They were expecting war. They didn't know I had brought the prize home already. The car stopped. The driver killed the engine. We are here, I said. Elena looked out the window at the massive building. She looked intimidated. She shrank back into her seat. I can't go in there, she whispered. Look at me, Dante. I'm wearing a thrift store sweater. I have a run in my tights. I don't belong in a place like that. I unbuckled my seatbelt. I turned to her. You belong where I say you belong, I said firmly. I opened my door and stepped out. The city noise rushed in. Horns, sirens, voices. I ignored it all. I walked around the back of the SUV to her side. I opened the door. She was sitting there clutching her purse to her chest like a shield. She looked up at me like I was the executioner. Come, I said, holding out my hand. She hesitated. She looked at my hand, then at my face. She took a deep breath. She placed her hand in mine. Her palm was damp. Her fingers were trembling. But she held on. I pulled her out of the car. She stumbled a little as her feet hit the pavement. I caught her. My arm went around her waist, steadying her. The contact was electric. I felt the heat of her body through her clothes. I felt the softness of her waist. She was solid, real. She gasped and looked up at me. Her face was inches from mine. "I've got you," I murmured. For a second, neither of us moved. The world stopped. The soldiers, the building, the traffic, it all faded away. It was just the heat of her body against mine. Then Mateo cleared his throat. "Boss," he said, "we should get inside. It's not safe out here." I tore my eyes away from Elena's lips. "Right," I said. I didn't let go of her waist. I pulled her flush against my side, shielding her with my body. "Walk with me," I told her. She nodded dumbly. We walked toward the glass doors. I felt the eyes of my men on us. I saw the confusion on their faces. They saw the dawn bringing home a librarian in a messy bun. They probably thought I had lost my mind. Let them think it. I tightened my grip on her waist. Elena Rossi was mine now, and God help anyone who tried to tell me otherwise.
Chapter 5. Elena. The lobby of the Valenti Tower was not a lobby. It was a cathedral built to worship money. The floors were black marble so polished I could see up my own skirt if I looked down. The walls were glass. The ceiling was somewhere in the stratosphere. And everywhere I looked, there were men in suits standing perfectly still, watching everything with dead shark eyes. I felt Dante's arm heavy and warm around my waist. He wasn't just guiding me. He was clamping me to his side. It was a possessive grip that said, "This is mine, don't touch." I tried to shrink. I tried to make myself invisible, which was my superpower, but it was impossible when you were attached to a man who took up all the oxygen in the room. I was conscious of every flaw in my appearance. The scuff mark on my left shoe, the way my cardigan was pilling at the elbows, the fact that I was breathing hard like I'd just run a marathon because my anxiety was spiking off the charts. We walked past a security desk where a man with a neck the size of a tree trunk nodded respectfully. "Welcome home, Mr. Valenti." Dante didn't even look at him. He just kept walking, pulling me toward a bank of gold elevators. "Dante," I hissed under my breath. "Everyone is staring." "Let them stare," he said, staring straight ahead. "They have never seen the boss with a woman before. It is a novelty." "I look like I'm being arrested," I muttered. "You look like you are with me," he corrected. "That is all that matters." He pressed the button, and the doors slid open instantly, like they had been waiting for him. We stepped inside. It was the largest elevator I had ever seen. There were no buttons, just a panel that scanned a keycard Dante pulled from his pocket. The doors closed, shutting out the lobby, shutting out the world. And then it was just us. And the mirrors. Of course, the elevator was mirrored. All 3 walls were floor-to-ceiling reflective glass. I was suddenly surrounded by 3 versions of myself, and every single one of them looked horrific. I saw the contrast. That was the worst part. Standing next to Dante, I looked like a disaster. He was sharp lines and tailored wool and dangerous elegance. I was soft edges and messy hair and cheap polyester. I looked round, short, dumpier than usual because I was slouching. I quickly looked away from my reflection, staring at the floor, counting the specks of gold in the marble. "Look at yourself," Dante said. His voice was low, trapped in the small space. I shook my head. "No, thank you." "Elena." I said no. I felt his hand move from my waist to my chin. He tilted my head up gently but firmly. He turned me until I was facing the mirror on the right. "Open your eyes," he ordered. I squeezed them shut tighter. "Why are you doing this? Is this part of the punishment? Humiliating me?" "Open them." I slowly peeled my eyes open. I saw us. a giant man in a gray suit looming over a curvy woman in a beige cardigan. His hand was on my face, his thumb resting on my cheekbone. He wasn't looking at himself. He was looking at my reflection, his eyes dark and unreadable. "I see a woman who is terrified of her own power," he said softly. "I don't have power, Dante," I argued, my voice trembling. "I have a library card and a mountain of student debt. That's not power." "You have power over me," he said. The words were so quiet I almost missed them. I looked at his reflection. He meant it. He wasn't mocking me. He looked captivating and captivated. The elevator dinged, saving me from having to respond. The doors slid open. "Penthouse," Dante announced, guiding me out. If the lobby was a cathedral, the penthouse was Olympus. It was an open-concept space that spanned the entire top floor of the building. 3 walls were nothing but glass, offering a panoramic view of the New York City skyline that would cost a normal person a lifetime of earnings to rent for a night. The furniture was sleek, modern, and Italian leather. Everything was black, white, or chrome. It was beautiful. It was cold. It looked like nobody actually lived here. Do you live here alone?" I asked, stepping onto the plush white rug that I was terrified of dirtying with my shoes. "I did," Dante said, closing the door behind us. The lock engaged with a heavy thud that echoed in my chest. "Now I live here with you." He walked past me, peeling off his suit jacket. He tossed it onto a black leather sofa with a casual grace that made my mouth go dry. Underneath, he was wearing a white dress shirt, the top 2 buttons undone, sleeves rolled up to his forearms, revealing tattoos I hadn't seen before. Ink crawled up his wrists, disappearing under the fabric. "I don't have anything," I realized suddenly. I stopped in the middle of the room, clutching my purse. "Dante, I don't have clothes. I don't have my contact lens solution. I don't have anything." He walked over to a wet bar in the corner and poured himself a drink. Amber liquid splashed into a crystal glass. "I know," he said. "I have already ordered everything you need. It will be delivered within the hour." "You ordered clothes?" I asked, skeptical. "How do you know my size? You can't just guess with me, Dante. I'm not a standard size. Things don't just fit." He turned around, leaning against the bar, taking a sip of his drink. His eyes traveled over me again, slow and measuring. It felt like he was taking a tape measure to my hips. "I have a very good memory," he said. "And I have very good eyes. I know your size, Elena." I blushed. "You're arrogant." "I am right," he countered. "Are you hungry?" My stomach chose that exact moment to let out a loud growl. I pressed my hand against it, mortified. I hadn't eaten since a granola bar at breakfast. Dante's lips quirked up in a ghost of a smile. It was the first time I had seen him look almost amused. It changed his whole face, making him look younger, less like a statue and more like a man. "I will take that as a yes," he said. He picked up a tablet from the counter and tapped on it a few times. "What do you like?" he asked. "Italian? Thai? Steak?" "I don't care," I said. "Anything." "Italian," he decided. "From Antonio's. It is the only place in the city that makes sauce correctly." He tapped a few more times, then set the tablet down. "Sit," he said, pointing to the sofa. "I'm afraid to sit on it," I admitted. "It costs more than my education." "It is a couch, Elena. It is made for sitting. Sit." I gingerly lowered myself onto the edge of the black leather sofa. It was surprisingly comfortable. I set my purse on the floor by my feet. Dante walked over, drink in hand. He didn't sit on the sofa opposite me. He sat right next to me, close enough that his thigh brushed against mine. I stiffened, scooting away a few inches. He noticed, but he didn't comment. He just took another sip of his drink. "We need to set some ground rules," he said, staring at the view of the Empire State Building. "Rules," I repeated, feeling the knot in my stomach tighten. "Like curfew? Chains?" He looked at me, his expression serious. "No chains, unless you ask for them." My mouth fell open. He ignored my shock. Rule number 1. You do not leave this apartment without me. Not for work, not for groceries, not for a walk. If you step out that door without me, my security team will bring you back and I will be displeased. You do not want to see me displeased. I can't just quit my job, I argued. I'm a librarian. People depend on me. I have already called the library, he said calmly. You are on indefinite medical leave, fully paid. You called my boss? I was sputtering now. How did you even— I own the building, the library is in Elena, he said casually. Rule number 2, you answer your phone when I call. Always. I don't even have my charger, I muttered. Rule number 3, he continued, his voice dropping an octave, becoming rougher. No hiding. I frowned. Hiding? I saw you in the elevator, he said, turning his body to face me. I saw you trying to disappear. I saw you pulling that sweater around yourself like it was armor. You do not hide from me. In this house you do not cover up because you think you are not enough. I want to see you. I swallowed hard, looking down at my hands. That's not really a rule, Dante. That's a personality transplant. I've spent my whole life hiding. You can't just order me to stop being insecure. I can order you to stop hiding your body, he said, and I will. The doorbell rang. Dante stood up. That will be the food. He walked to the door. I sat there trying to process everything. He was insane, controlling, overbearing, and yet, he had noticed. He had noticed my insecurity not with disgust, but with annoyance. He wanted to see me. He came back carrying 4 large paper bags. 4 bags? I asked as he set them on the coffee table. Who else is coming? No one, he said. Just us. He started unpacking the food. Containers of pasta, garlic bread, antipasto, grilled vegetables, tiramisu. It was enough food to feed a football team. Dante, this is insane, I said. We can't eat all this. I didn't know what you would want, he said, shrugging. So I got everything. He handed me a fork. Eat. I hesitated. Eating in front of people was another one of my anxieties. I always felt like people were judging what I put in my mouth, judging my size against my appetite. I'm not that hungry, I lied. Dante stopped opening a container of lasagna. He looked at me. Rule number 4, he said softly. You do not lie to me. He scooped a massive portion of lasagna onto a plate and put it in front of me. Then he added 2 pieces of garlic bread. Eat, Elena, he said. I like a woman with an appetite. He sat back down next to me and started eating directly from a container of penny. He ate with a robust, unself-conscious hunger. He didn't wipe his mouth daintily. He just ate. It was strangely comforting. I picked up my fork. I took a small bite of the lasagna. Oh my God, I moaned before I could stop myself. It was the best thing I had ever tasted. Rich, creamy, perfectly seasoned. Dante stopped chewing. He looked at me, his eyes darkening at the sound I had made. Good? He asked. Amazing, I admitted. I took another bite. Then another. The hunger took over. I ate. I ate until I was full, and then I ate a little more because Dante kept pushing the garlic bread toward me. For the first time all day, the knot of anxiety in my chest loosened just a fraction. We ate in silence, but it wasn't the heavy silence of the library. It was a companionable silence. The kind of silence you share with someone you know well. And that was the terrifying truth. I did know him. I knew he liked spicy food. I knew he hated the sound of rain against glass. I knew he was afraid of dying alone. I put my fork down, leaning back against the sofa. I'm going to explode. Dante looked at my plate, which was clean. He looked satisfied. Primal satisfaction. Like he had provided for his mate and she was fed. Good, he said. He stood up and gathered the empty containers. The bedroom is down the hall to the right, he said. The bathroom is attached. Your clothes should be there by now. Wait, I said, standing up too quickly. The room spun for a second. The bedroom? Singular? Dante paused. He looked back at me. Yes, the bedroom. Where are you sleeping? I asked, my voice small. He looked at me for a long moment. The air in the room grew heavy again, charged with that electricity I couldn't explain. "I have not decided yet," he said, "but tonight you sleep in my bed. I want you where I can find you if I wake up." "Dante, I can't." "Go shower, Elena." He cut me off, gentle but firm. "Wash the day off. Put on something that doesn't smell like old books and fear. We will talk about sleeping arrangements when you are clean." He turned and walked toward the kitchen, leaving me standing there in the middle of his $1,000,000 living room, feeling full confused and terrified of the fact that I actually wanted to go sleep in his bed. I grabbed my purse and walked down the hall, to the right, into the lion's den.
Chapter 6. Dante. The water was running. I stood in the center of the living room holding a glass of whiskey that I hadn't taken a sip of in 10 minutes. My entire world had narrowed down to the sound of water rushing through pipes behind the closed bedroom door. I knew the layout of this penthouse better than the back of my hand. I knew that the master bathroom had frosted glass walls. I knew that the shower was big enough for 2 people. Maybe 3. I knew that right now Elena was standing under the spray naked, washing the scent of old books and fear off her skin. I took a drink. The whiskey burned on the way down, but it did nothing to put out the fire in my blood. I should be working. My phone was vibrating on the kitchen counter. Matteo was probably losing his mind. The capos were expecting a sit-down at 8. The Russians were moving product through Red Hook. The commission was waiting for me to kiss the ring or cut off a hand. I didn't care. For 5 years I had cared about survival. I had cared about keeping my shank sharp and my back to the wall. I had cared about the politics of a cage. Now I cared about the woman in my shower. I walked over to the stack of shopping bags that had been delivered 10 minutes ago. My personal shopper was efficient. I had sent her a text with measurements that I had estimated with my eyes and a few descriptors. Soft, curvy, classy, no polyester. I looked inside the top bag. Silk, cashmere, lace. I reached in and pulled out a slip of black lace. It was tiny, it was expensive, and it was going to look devastating on her. Elena didn't know what she was. She looked in the mirror and saw flaws. I looked at her and saw a masterpiece that just hadn't been framed properly yet. She thought her curves were something to hide under baggy sweaters. I intended to spend the next few weeks, or years, proving to her that they were something to be worshipped. The water stopped. The silence that followed was heavy. I put the lace back in the bag and walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window. The city was lighting up below me, a grid of gold and white against the darkness. It was my city. I had fought for it. I had bled for it. But staring at it now, it felt empty. I heard the bathroom door open, then the click of the bedroom door handle. I turned around. Elena was standing in the hallway. The air left my lungs in a rush. She was wearing the silk pajama set I had ordered. It was a deep emerald green, the color of old money and jealousy. The fabric was liquid, sliding over her skin like water. It clung to her hips. It draped over her breasts. The top button was undone, showing the creamy skin of her throat and just a hint of her collarbone. Her hair was wet, darker now that it was damp, falling in loose waves around her shoulders. She had scrubbed her face clean. No glasses, no makeup. She looked fresh. She looked young. And she looked terrified. She was clutching the door frame like she was ready to bolt back inside and lock the door. "It fits," I said. My voice was rougher than I intended. She looked down at herself, pulling at the hem of the silk top. Yes, it fits. It feels like I'm wearing water. Is this silk? Real silk?" "Yes. I've never worn real silk before," she murmured. She rubbed the fabric between her thumb and forefinger. "It feels like it costs more than my car." "It probably does," I said. I walked toward her. I couldn't help it. I was a moth and she was the flame. I stopped a few feet away, giving her space, but close enough that I could smell her. The vanilla was gone, replaced by the scent of my body wash. Sandalwood and citrus. She smelled like me. That realization hit me low in the gut. "You smell better," I said. She blushed. Her skin turned that shade of pink that I was becoming addicted to. "I used your soap. I didn't see anything else. I hope that's okay." "Use whatever you want, Elena. Everything in this house is yours." She looked up at me, squinting slightly without her glasses. Her eyes were vulnerable. "Dante, why are you doing this? The clothes, the food, everything. You said this was about a debt, but this doesn't feel like a debt collection. This feels like..." "Like what?" "Like a date," she whispered. "A really intense, really scary date." I laughed. A short, sharp sound. "You think I buy silk pajamas for all my debtors? You think I bring Frankie Rossi here and feed him lasagna?" "I don't know what you do," she said, finding a little bit of her spine. She crossed her arms. "I don't know you. Not the real you. I know the guy who wrote letters about philosophy and his favorite childhood memory. I don't know the Don." "They are the same man," I said. "Are they?" She looked pointedly at the tattoos on my forearms. "Because the guy in the letters sounded lonely. The guy standing here looks like he owns the world. I can own the world and still be lonely, Elena." She went quiet. She understood that. I knew she did. That was the bond we had shared in the ink. Two lonely people shouting into the void and finding an echo. "Come," I said, extending my hand. "Sit, we need to talk about the arrangement." She hesitated, looking at my hand like it was a trap. Eventually, she took it. Her skin was warm and damp from the shower. I led her back to the living room, but I didn't take her to the couch. I took her to the window. I wanted her to see what I saw. "Look," I said, gesturing to the city below. She looked. Her eyes widened. "It's beautiful." "It's a machine," I corrected. "It eats people. It chews them up and spits them out. Your father is one of the people it chewed up." She stiffened, pulling her hand away. "Don't talk about him like he's dead." "He might as well be," I said brutally. "He owes $500,000 to me. He owes another $50,000 to the Irish. He owes his bookie on 4th Street. He is drowning Elena." She wrapped her arms around herself, hugging her waist. The silk pulled tight across her back. "I told you I'll pay it back. I'll get a second job. I'll sell my things." I turned to face her, leaning my hip against the glass. "You earn $40,000 a year as a librarian. After taxes and rent, you have maybe $200 of disposable income a month. It would take you 200 years to pay off the principal of his debt. That is not counting the interest." She bit her lip. "So what? You're going to kill him?" "No," I said. "I'm going to forgive the debt." She froze. She looked up at me, hope warring with suspicion in her eyes. You are?" "Yes. I will wipe the slate clean. I will call off the dogs. I will even pay off the Irish so they don't break his thumbs." "Why?" she breathed. "Why would you do that?" "Because you are going to pay it for him." She took a step back. "I told you I don't have money." "I don't want your money," I growled. I pushed off the glass and closed the distance between us. I crowded her space, forcing her to look up at me. "I have more money than God. I don't need cash." "Then what do you want?" "I need a wife." The word hung in the air between us, heavy and absolute. Elena stared at me. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She blinked once, twice. What?" "A wife," I repeated. "The commission is getting restless. They think I have been away too long. They think I am unstable. They want to see that I am settled. that I am focused on the future. A wife creates an image of stability. It was a lie. Or at least it was only half the truth. Yes, the commission liked stability, but I didn't give a damn what the commission liked. I could crush any dissent with a snap of my fingers. I didn't want a wife for the commission. I wanted a wife because I wanted her. And in my world, you locked down what was valuable. You put a ring on it. You put your name on it. You made sure everyone knew that touching it was a death sentence. You want me to marry you? She squeaked. Fake marry you? Real marry me, I said. A courthouse, a judge, a certificate, the whole thing. You're insane, she said. She turned around and started walking toward the door. You are actually insane. I'm leaving. If you walk out that door, I said, my voice calm and low, I make a phone call, and your father loses his legs tonight. She stopped. She stood there for a long, agonizing moment, her back to me. I saw her shoulders shaking. Then she turned around. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. She was furious. You are a monster, she hissed. The letters, they were all a lie, weren't they? You pretended to be this human being. But you're just a thug in a nice suit. The insult stung. It stung more than a bullet would have. I am both, I said. I am the man who wrote to you, and I am the man who will burn the city down to get what he wants. Right now, I want you. Why me? She shouted, throwing her hands up. Look at me, Dante. I am a mess. I am socially awkward. I'm curvy. I am not a mafia wife. You could have a supermodel. You could have a politician's daughter. Why do you want the librarian with the credit card debt? Because the supermodel doesn't know what it feels like to wake up in the middle of the night screaming because the silence is too loud, I said quietly. She went still. Because the politician's daughter didn't write to me for 730 days without asking for a single dime, I continued walking toward her again. Because when I look at you, I don't see a mess, Elena. I see the only real thing in my life. I stopped right in front of her. I reached out and took her hand. It was trembling. Marry me, I said. And your father is free. You live here. You want for nothing. You are protected. You are worshipped. Worshipped, she scoffed, a tear finally escaping and rolling down her cheek. I'm a prisoner. Be my prisoner then, I whispered, leaning down until our foreheads were almost touching. Be my prisoner. Be my queen. Just be here. She stared into my eyes, searching for something. I didn't know what she saw. I hoped she saw the desperation underneath the command. I hoped she saw that I was terrified too. Terrified that she would say no and I would have to let her go, because despite my threats, I knew I couldn't actually hurt her. How long? She asked brokenly. Forever, I wanted to say. Until the debt is paid, I said instead. How is it calculated? She asked the librarian in her trying to find logic in the chaos. Is it a year, 2? We will see, I said. She took a deep breath. She looked down at their joined hands, my large tattooed hand engulfing her small soft one. If I say yes, she said, looking back up her whiskey eyes fierce. If I do this, you don't touch me. I stiffened. Excuse me? You don't touch me, she repeated. I am not payment in that way. I will wear the ring. I will go to your dinners. I will live in your house. But I am not a prostitute, Dante. You don't get my body just because you bought my dad's debt. I stared at her. She was bargaining. She was standing in the penthouse of a killer telling him no. God, she was perfect. I felt a smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. Fine, I said. I won't touch you. Her shoulders slumped in relief. Okay. Then. Okay. But, I added, lowering my voice to a velvet whisper, I won't touch you until you ask me to. She glared at me. I will never ask you to. We'll see, I said. I lifted her hand to my mouth. I kept my eyes on hers as I pressed a kiss to her knuckles. Her breath hitched. I felt her pulse jump under my lips. Deal? I asked against her skin. She shivered. It rippled through her whole body. Deal, she whispered. I dropped her hand. Good, I said, turning away before I did something stupid like kiss her properly and break our agreement 5 seconds after making it. Go to sleep, Elena. We have a busy day tomorrow. What's tomorrow? She asked, warily. Tomorrow we get the ring, I said, and tomorrow you meet the family. I walked to the bar and poured myself another drink. I listened to the sound of her bare feet retreating down the hall. I waited until I heard the bedroom door click shut. Then I downed the whiskey in one swallow. I won't touch her. I looked at my reflection in the dark window. Liar, I said to the glass.
Chapter 7. Elena. I woke up drowning in gray silk sheets that smelled like sandalwood and danger. For a solid 10 seconds, I didn't know where I was. The ceiling was too high. The light coming through the curtains was too bright. The mattress was too comfortable. It felt like sleeping on a cloud that had been specifically engineered by NASA. Then the memories of yesterday crashed into me like a freight train. The library. Dante. The debt. The deal. I sat up abruptly, clutching the silk sheet to my chest. My heart did a nervous little flip. I was in Dante Valenti's bed. I was in the penthouse of a mafia don, and I had agreed to marry him. Oh God, I whispered into the empty room. What have I done? I looked around. The room was massive, minimalist, and masculine. Black furniture, gray walls, abstract art that looked angry. It was spotless. There wasn't a single sock on the floor or a water glass on the nightstand. It was a room belonging to a man who controlled everything in his environment. And now I was part of that environment. I swung my legs out of bed. The floor was heated. Of course it was. I padded across the room to the ensuite bathroom, caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, and groaned. My hair was a bird's nest. My eyes were puffy from stress. I looked like a woodland creature that had been dragged into the city by mistake. I showered quickly, using the fancy products that smelled like citrus and money. When I stepped out, I found a garment bag hanging on the back of the door that definitely hadn't been there when I went in. There was a note attached to the zipper. Wear this. We leave in 30 minutes. D. My stomach twisted. I unzipped the bag. It was a dress. A red dress. I pulled it out and held it up. It wasn't just red, it was red. Like spilled wine, like a stop sign. It was a knit fabric, heavy and expensive, with long sleeves and a high neck, which was good. But the cut. The cut was predatory. It was designed to cling. No, I said to the dress. Absolutely not. I looked at the pile of clothes I had worn yesterday. My safe, baggy cardigan and my comfortable skirt. They had been taken away. The hamper was empty. He stole my clothes, I muttered, panic rising in my throat. He actually stole my clothes. I didn't have a choice. It was the red dress or the silk pajamas. I put the dress on. It slid over my head and settled on my body like a second skin. I turned to the mirror and flinched. It fit. It fit perfectly. And that was the problem. It hugged my chest, cinched at my waist, and traced the curve of my hips and thighs with unforgiving precision. There was nowhere to hide. My stomach wasn't flat. My hips were wide. In my head, I looked like a tomato trying to burst out of its skin. I grabbed a towel and wrapped it around my waist like a sarong. Then I realized how stupid that looked and threw it down. I looked around for a jacket, a robe, a blanket, anything. Nothing. I took a deep breath. 30 minutes. I just had to survive 30 minutes, and then maybe I could convince him to let me buy a coat. A very large, very thick coat. I walked out of the bedroom and down the long hallway toward the living room. Dante was there. He was standing by the kitchen island, drinking espresso and reading something on a tablet. He was wearing a black suit today, crisp white shirt, no tie. He looked devastating. He looked like the kind of man who ruined women's lives and didn't even notice. He looked up as I entered the room. He froze. His hand paused halfway to his mouth with the espresso cup. His dark eyes locked onto me and swept down my body, slow and heavy, like a physical touch. He didn't blink. He didn't smile. He just stared. I crossed my arms over my chest, trying to shield myself. I felt my face burning. "I know," I said quickly, my voice high and defensive. "It's too tight. It's too bright. I look ridiculous. If I could just have my old clothes back, I'll—" "Stop," he said. He set the cup down on the marble counter with a sharp clink. He walked around the island. He didn't rush. He moved with that predatory grace that made my knees feel weak. He walked straight toward me. I backed up. "Dante, seriously. I can't go out like this. People will stare. I feel naked." "You are not naked," he said, closing the distance. "You are covered from neck to knee." "It highlights everything," I argued, taking another step back. My heel hit the wall. I was trapped. Dante stopped inches from me. He was so big. He blocked out the light, the room, everything. All I could see was him, the sharp line of his jaw, the shadow of stubble on his cheeks, the intensity in those black eyes. "It highlights the truth," he said. His voice dropped, vibrating through the small space between us. "The truth is that I need a gym membership," I snapped, trying to use humor as a shield. "And maybe some Spanx." He slammed his hand against the wall right next to my head. I gasped and flinched, pressing myself flat against the plaster. "Do not," he growled, leaning in until his nose brushed against mine. "Do not insult my wife." "I'm not your wife yet," I whispered, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "You are wearing my ring soon," he said. "You are living in my house. You are mine, and I do not allow anyone to insult what is mine, not even you." He moved his other hand, boxing me in. I was surrounded by him. The scent of sandalwood and coffee was overwhelming. I couldn't breathe. I didn't want to breathe. "You think you are ugly," he said. It wasn't a question. "I think I'm not what you're used to," I managed to say. "I'm heavy, Dante. I'm soft. I take up space." "Good," he murmured. He leaned closer, his lips hovering over my ear. "I like that you take up space. I like that when I hold you, I will feel a woman, not a ghost." His breath ghosted over my neck, sending shivers racing down my spine. My legs felt like jelly. I wanted to melt into the floor. I wanted him to keep talking. "You look in the mirror and you see flaws," he whispered, his voice rough with something that sounded like hunger. "I look at you and I see a feast." He pulled back just enough to look me in the eye. His gaze dropped to my mouth, then back up. The air between us crackled. It was electric. It was hot. "We have a deal," I reminded him, my voice trembling. "No touching." He smirked. It was a dangerous, arrogant smile. "I am not touching you, Elena," he said. "I am touching the wall." He was right. His hands were planted on the plaster on either side of my head, but his body was millimeters from mine. I could feel the heat radiating off him. If I took a deep breath, my chest would brush against his. "You're playing with semantics," I breathed. "I am playing with fire," he corrected, "and I am enjoying the burn." He stared at my lips again. I saw his pupils dilate. He wanted to kiss me. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. He wasn't disgusted by the dress. He wasn't mocking me. He wanted to devour me right here in the hallway, and God help me, I wanted him to. My body betrayed me. I leaned forward just a fraction of an inch, a silent invitation. Dante saw it. His eyes flared. He leaned in. The elevator chimed. The sound shattered the moment like a rock through a window. Dante pulled back instantly. The mask slammed back into place. The hunger vanished, replaced by cold indifference, though his chest was rising and falling a little faster than before. "The car is ready," he said, stepping away and adjusting his cuffs. "We are going to the jeweler." I stood there against the wall, trembling, feeling cold without his heat. I wrapped my arms around myself, trying to calm my racing heart. "Okay," I whispered. He looked at me one last time. His eyes lingered on the curve of my hip in the red dress. "Shoulders back, Elena," he commanded softly. "You are with me. You do not cower." I took a deep breath. I pushed off the wall. I pulled my shoulders back. "Fine," I said. "Let's go buy a ring." The jeweler wasn't a store. It was a vault. We took the car to a nondescript building in the Diamond District. We were buzzed through 3 sets of security doors before entering a private room that smelled like leather and quiet desperation. A small man with glasses and a nervous sweating problem was waiting for us. He had a velvet tray of rings laid out on a mahogany table. "Mr. Valenti," the man squeaked. "It is an honor, an absolute honor." Dante ignored the pleasantries. He pulled out a chair for me. I sat down, conscious of how the red dress rode up my thighs. Dante sat next to me, close enough that his knee pressed against mine. He didn't move away. "Show us the best," Dante said. Of course," the jeweler stammered. "I pulled these based on your specifications." He pushed the tray forward. I looked down and gasped. They were huge, massive diamonds, emerald cuts, cushion cuts, ovals. They sparkled so brightly under the halogen lights that it actually hurt my eyes. "These are—" I trailed off. "These are too big." "They are adequate," Dante said. He reached out and picked up a massive oval diamond set in platinum. He grabbed my left hand. "Dante," I hissed. "I can't wear that. I work in a library. I'll knock someone unconscious if I move my hand too fast." "You are not working in a library anymore," he reminded me, sliding the ring onto my finger. It was heavy. It felt like an anchor. And it was loose. It spun around my finger. "Too big," Dante said, frowning. He pulled it off and tossed it back on the tray, with a carelessness that made the jeweler flinch. "Try this one," the jeweler said, handing him a vintage-style ring. It was an emerald cut, surrounded by a halo of smaller diamonds. It was Art Deco. It was stunning. Dante slid it onto my finger. It fit perfectly. I stared at it. It was beautiful. It was the kind of ring you saw in movies, not on the hand of a girl who bought her clothes at discount outlets. "Do you like it?" Dante asked. I looked up at him. It's a lot, Dante. It's beautiful, but it's a lot." "You are marrying the Dawn," he said simply. "You need a ring that commands respect. This one says keep your distance." "It says rob me," I countered. He laughed, a genuine low chuckle. He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a whisper so the jeweler couldn't hear. "Let them try," he said. "They will lose their hands." He looked at the ring, then at my face. He turned my hand over in his, examining my palm. He ran his thumb over the soft skin of my wrist. "We'll take it," he told the jeweler. "Excellent choice, sir. I'll just need to verify the insurance and put it on the account," Dante said, standing up. "We are wearing it out." "Of course, right away." Dante pulled me up from the chair. He kept hold of my hand. The ring felt heavy and cold, but his hand was warm. "One more thing," Dante said to the jeweler. "Yes, sir?" "We need wedding bands for the ceremony tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" The jeweler's eyes bulged. I can show you what we have in stock, but custom usually takes—" "Stock is fine," Dante said. "Simple. Gold. For both of us." Both of us. I looked at Dante. He was going to wear a ring. Men like him usually didn't. They didn't like being tied down. He caught my look. "You mark me, I mark you," he murmured. "That is the deal." The jeweler scrambled to bring out a tray of gold bands. Dante picked a thick, simple gold band for himself and a matching, thinner one for me. "Done," he said. We walked out of the building 5 minutes later. The sunlight hit the diamond on my finger and sent a prism of light dancing across the sidewalk. I felt branded. Hungry? Dante asked as we got back into the SUV. Always, I said automatically, then clamped my mouth shut. Dante grinned. Good, because we have lunch with my mother in an hour. My stomach dropped. Your mother? Ma, he corrected. And don't worry, she's going to love you. Why? I asked, panicking. Because I'm so charming? No, Dante said, looking at my red dress with burning satisfaction. Because you are the first woman I have ever brought home who actually looks like she eats pasta. He signaled the driver. Drive.
Chapter 8. Dante. The drive to Queens was quiet. It was a loud kind of quiet, though. Elena was vibrating in the seat next to me. I could actually feel the tremors traveling through the leather console. She kept twisting the massive diamond ring on her finger. She spun it round and round like a toy that cost $100,000. I reached over and covered her hand with mine. Stop. You are going to polish the skin right off your finger. She froze. Her hand was small and soft under my palm. Her knuckles were white from tension. I cannot help it. She looked out the window at the passing rows of brick houses. I am about to meet the mother of a crime boss. I feel like I am going to a job interview where the penalty for failure is a pair of concrete shoes. Ma does not own any concrete shoes, I said. She prefers a wooden spoon. Elena looked at me. Her eyes were wide behind her glasses. She had put them back on the second we got in the car. I did not mind. The glasses gave her a look that contrasted dangerously well with the red dress. A wooden spoon? She repeated. Is that a metaphor? No. It is a kitchen utensil, and she is very accurate with it. Do not make her mad, and you will not have to dodge. Elena groaned and slumped back in her seat. Great. Just great. Does she know about the arrangement? She knows I am bringing my fiancé to lunch, I said. She knows we are getting married tomorrow. That is all she needs to know. What about the debt? What about the fact that we have never been on a date that did not involve a hostage negotiation? Details. I squeezed her hand before letting go. Ma does not care about details. She cares about results. She wants grandchildren. She wants me to stop looking like a shark hunting for blood and start looking like a family man. You are the solution to her prayers. Elena looked down at her red dress. I look like a tomato in this. A very expensive tomato. You look like a woman who has blood in her veins, I said, lowering my voice. Ma hates the women I used to bring around. She called them coat hangers. She said they looked like they would break if the wind blew too hard. I looked at Elena's thighs. I looked at the way the red knit fabric hugged them. There was nothing breakable about her. She was solid. Soft, yes, but substantial. We are here, I announced as the car turned into the driveway. It was guarded by a wrought iron gate and two men in suits who looked very out of place in the suburban neighborhood. My mother refused to leave the house I grew up in. It was a big brick 2-story in Whitestone. It was not a mansion, but it was a fortress. The windows were bulletproof. The perimeter was alarmed. There were always 3 armed guards rotating shifts in the backyard, disguised as gardeners. The car stopped. Breathe, I told Elena. I am trying, she wheezed. My lungs are currently on strike. I got out and walked around to her side. I opened the door and offered her my hand. She took it. Her palm was still damp again. Shoulders back, I reminded her. You are with me. She straightened her spine. She lifted her chin. It was a small movement, but it shifted her entire presence. She went from terrified victim to nervous queen. I led her up the front steps. Before I could even reach for the doorknob, the door swung open. Ma was standing there. She was 5 feet nothing. She was wearing a floral apron over a black dress. Her gray hair was pulled back in a bun so tight it probably pulled her eyelids back. She held a wooden spoon in one hand, like a scepter. "Dante," she barked. "You are late. Traffic, Ma," I said, leaning down to kiss her cheek. She smelled like garlic basil and expensive perfume. "It is the Van Wyck. It is always a parking lot. Excuses." She sniffed. She pulled back and looked past me. Her dark eyes were exactly like mine. They locked onto Elena. The silence stretched. It was agonizing. I saw Elena swallow hard. Ma took a step forward. She walked around Elena. She circled her like a general inspecting a new recruit. She looked at the shoes. She looked at the ring. She looked at the hips. She stopped in front of Elena and poked her in the stomach with the handle of the spoon. "You eat?" Ma asked. Elena blinked. She looked startled. Yes? I mean, I try to. 3 times a day, sometimes snacks." Ma narrowed her eyes. "You like pasta?" "I love pasta," Elena said honestly, "especially lasagna. Dante gave me some yesterday and I almost cried." My mother's stone-cold expression cracked. A small, satisfied smile broke through. "He gave you the lasagna from Antonio's?" Ma asked. "Yes. That is my recipe," Ma said. "I taught Antonio everything he knows. If you like that, you have good taste." She reached up and grabbed Elena's face with both hands. She squished her cheeks together. "Beautiful," Ma declared. "Finally, a woman with some meat on her bones. A woman I do not have to worry about snapping in half when I hug her." Elena looked like she had just been slapped by a rainbow. She stood there with her cheeks squished, looking at me for help. I grinned. "I told you." Ma let go of Elena and slapped my arm. "Do not stand there grinning like an idiot. Come inside. The gravy is on the stove. And you," she pointed at Elena. "You sit next to me. I want to know everything. How did you meet? Why is he marrying you so fast? Is it a shotgun wedding? Are you pregnant?" "No," Elena squeaked. Her face turned the same color as her dress. "Definitely not pregnant. Absolutely not. Pity," Ma said, turning around and marching back into the house. "We will work on that." I placed my hand on the small of Elena's back and guided her inside. I could feel the heat radiating off her skin. "Work on that," she whispered to me. Her voice was frantic. "Dante, she wants us to work on that." "Relax," I whispered back, leaning close to her ear. "We have to get through the wedding first. The consummation comes later." She elbowed me in the ribs. It was a weak hit, but I liked it. It showed spirit. The dining room was set for 3. The table was groaning under the weight of the food. There was a platter of antipasto. There was a bowl of pasta with Sunday gravy. There was fresh bread and roasted peppers and meatballs the size of baseballs. "Sit," Ma ordered. We sat. Ma wasted no time. She started piling food onto Elena's plate. "So," Ma said, spooning 3 meatballs onto Elena's pasta. "Dante tells me you are a librarian." "Yes," Elena said, picking up her fork. "I work at the public library in the city." "Smart." Ma nodded. "I like smart. Dante needs smart. He thinks with his fists too much. He needs someone who thinks with her head. I think with my head plenty." I argued, taking a piece of bread. "You spent 5 years in a cell because you were loyal to a rat." Ma shot back. "That is not thinking. That is stubbornness." The room went quiet. The mention of prison was still a sore spot. Ma hated that I had gone in. She hated that I had taken the fall for the family mistakes. Elena looked between us, sensing the tension. She took a bite of a meatball. "Oh my God," she moaned. Ma stopped glaring at me and looked at Elena. Elena closed her eyes, chewing slowly. "This is incredible. I mean, Antonio's was good, but this is illegal. This should be a controlled substance." Ma preened. She actually preened. You like the fennel? I add extra fennel. It is perfect, Elena said. She took another bite. A big one. She was not pretending. She was eating with genuine pleasure. I watched her. I watched her lips wrap around the fork. I watched her throat move as she swallowed. A dark, possessive heat coiled in my gut. I wanted to feed her. I wanted to be the one putting things in her mouth. I shifted in my chair, adjusting my napkin to cover the reaction my body was having. It was ridiculous. I was a grown man. I was a Don, and I was getting turned on by a lunch date. So, Ma said, her voice softer now. The wedding? Tomorrow? City Hall? Yes, I said. It is a disgrace, Ma said, shaking her head. A Valenti wedding should be an event. 500 guests, the bishop, flowers everywhere. Instead, you give me a courthouse and 24 hours notice. It is safer this way, Ma, I said. Things are unstable right now. With the Russians. Ma waved her hand dismissively. The Russians are always unstable. They drink too much vodka. But fine. Small wedding. But afterwards we have a party here. Sunday, Ma, Sunday, she insisted. Family only. The capos, the cousins, I will cook. We will celebrate properly. You cannot hide your wife, Dante. If you hide her, people will think she is a weakness. You show her off. You show them she is strong. She looked at Elena. Are you strong, Elena? Elena put down her fork. She wiped her mouth with the linen napkin. I do not know, she said quietly. I cry during sad movies. I am afraid of spiders. And yesterday I almost had a panic attack in an elevator. I tensed. I had not expected her to be that honest. In my world, you did not admit fear. Not ever. But Ma did not look disappointed. She leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. Fear is not weakness, Ma said. Fear keeps you alive. The question is not, do you have fear? The question is, can you stand by his side when the bullets fly? Can you hold his secrets? Can you be the one place in the world where he does not have to be the Don? Elena looked at me. Her whiskey eyes searched mine. I can hold his secrets, she said. I have been holding them for 2 years. The table went silent. Ma looked at me sharply. 2 years, we wrote, I said quickly. While I was inside, she was my pen pal. Ma's eyebrows shot up into her hairline. The letters? The ones you kept in the shoebox under your bunk? The ones you threatened to kill a guard for touching? I felt my neck heat up. Ma. I heard stories, Ma said. A grin spread across her face. Matteo told me. He said Dante has gone soft. He is writing poetry to a ghost. She looked back at Elena with new respect. So you are the ghost, Ma said. You are the one who kept him sane. I think we kept each other sane, Elena said. Ma nodded slowly. She reached out and patted Elena's hand. Good, she said. Then you are family. Eat your bread. The rest of the lunch was a blur of food and interrogation. Ma asked about Elena's family. Elena handled it gracefully, mentioning her father's health issues without mentioning his gambling addiction or the massive debt he owed us. She was protective of him. I liked that loyalty. By the time the espresso was served, Elena looked like she was about to fall into a food coma. She was relaxed, leaning back in her chair, laughing at a story Ma was telling about my childhood. Specifically, the time I tried to run away to join the circus because I wanted to tame lions. I still tame lions, I said dryly. They just wear suits now. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A distinct pattern. 3 short vibrations. Trouble. I pulled it out. A text from Matteo. Russians hit one of the trucks in Jersey. Driver is in the hospital. Cargo is gone. We need you at the warehouse. Now. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. The warmth evaporated. I stood up. We have to go, I said. Elena looked up, sensing the change immediately. Her smile vanished. What happened? Business, I said, my voice clipping into its professional tone. Ma, thank you for lunch. Ma stood up too. She did not ask questions. She knew the life. She knew that when the phone buzzed, the sun disappeared, and the soldier took his place. Go, she said. She kissed my cheek, then turned to Elena. She hugged her. A real hug. Welcome to the family, Ma whispered. Be strong, Bella. You are going to need it. I grabbed Elena's hand and led her out of the house. We moved faster this time. The relaxed banter was gone. Once we were back in the safety of the SUV, I signaled the driver. Drop her at the penthouse, I ordered. Then take me to the warehouse in Newark. Is everything okay? Elena asked. She was twisting the ring again, looked at her. She looked soft and beautiful in her red dress. She was full of my mother's food and flushed with the warmth of the afternoon. She did not belong in a warehouse covered in blood and gasoline. It is fine, I lied. Just a shipping error. I reached over and pulled her toward me. I needed to touch her. I needed to ground myself before I went to deal with the violence. I wrapped my hand around the back of her neck and pulled her face to mine. Go home, I said, my thumb stroking her cheekbone. Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone but me. Understand? I understand, she whispered. Her breath hitched, her eyes dropped to my lips. I wanted to kiss her. I wanted to taste the espresso and the fear on her tongue. I wanted to mark her so thoroughly that the Russians would feel it from across the river. But not yet. I will be late, I said. Do not wait up. I kissed her forehead. It was a chaste kiss, a promise. I pulled back and let her go. She sat back in her corner watching me with wide, worried eyes. I turned away and looked out the window as the city skyline rose up to meet us. The lion tamer was going back to work. But for the first time in my life, I was not fighting for territory or pride. I was fighting to make sure the world was safe enough for the woman in the red dress to sleep soundly.
Chapter 9. Elena. The penthouse was quiet. It was not the peaceful quiet of a library where silence felt like a warm blanket. This was a cold silence. It was the silence of a vacuum. It was the silence of a place where nobody really lived. I sat on the black leather sofa with my knees pulled up to my chest. I was wearing the green silk pajamas again. The red dress was hanging in the closet. It looked like a shed skin. It looked like a costume for a woman I did not know how to be yet. The digital clock on the microwave read 2 a.m. Dante was not back. He had been gone for 10 hours. I had tried to sleep. I had gone to the bedroom around 11 and laid in the center of the massive bed. I stared at the ceiling. I counted sheep. I counted books I wanted to read. I counted the reasons why I should run out the front door and never look back. But I could not sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him. I saw the way he looked when he read that text message. The warmth had vanished from his face instantly. The man who had held my hand and joked about lions was gone. In his place was a soldier. He had gone to a warehouse in Newark. He had gone to deal with Russians who had stolen his cargo. I knew what that meant. I read books. I watched movies. Men like Dante did not deal with theft by filing a police report. They dealt with it by making sure the people who stole from them could never steal again. The thought made my stomach twist. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling window. The city was still awake below me. It was a sea of lights stretching out to the horizon. Somewhere out there in the dark, Dante was doing something terrible, and I was worried about him. That was the part that scared me the most. I should be worried about myself. I should be planning my escape. I should be celebrating the fact that my captor was gone. Instead, I was pacing the floor wondering if he was hurt. I pressed my forehead against the cool glass. I knew him. That was the problem? I knew that he hated violence. He had written about it in his letters. He called it a necessary evil. He said it was a tool like a hammer. You use it to build or you use it to destroy, but you do not enjoy swinging it. I remembered a letter from 6 months ago. He had written about a bird that had gotten trapped in the prison yard. The other inmates wanted to kill it. Dante had spent 3 hours guarding the bird until it could fly away. That was the man I was marrying tomorrow. But the man who was out there tonight was the Dawn. The elevator chimed. I jumped, spinning around. My heart hammered against my ribs. The doors slid open. Dante stepped out. He looked wrecked. His suit jacket was gone. His white shirt was unbuttoned halfway down his chest and the sleeves were rolled up to his elbows. The pristine white fabric was stained. There were dark smears on the front. Dirt. Grease. And something that looked terrifyingly like dried blood. His hair was messy like he had been running his hands through it. His face was gray with exhaustion. There was a bruise forming on his jaw, dark and angry. He did not see me at first. He walked straight to the bar, his movements heavy. He poured a drink. He did not use a glass. He just tipped the bottle of whiskey back and took a long pull. He lowered the bottle and hissed a breath through his teeth. Then he turned and saw me. He froze. "Why are you awake?" His voice was a rasp. It sounded like he had been screaming. "I could not sleep," I said. He looked at me. His eyes were bloodshot. They were cold. The warmth from lunch was gone completely. He looked at me like I was a stranger. Like I was a piece of furniture he did not remember buying. "Go to bed, Elena," he said. He turned his back on me and took another drink. I did not move. I stared at the stain on his shirt. "Are you hurt?" I asked. My voice was small in the big room. "No, that is blood on your shirt. It is not mine." The answer was quick, blunt. It was supposed to reassure me, but it just made the cold feeling in my stomach spread. I took a step toward him. "Dante, do not," he snapped. He slammed the bottle down on the counter. The sound echoed like a gunshot. He turned around. His eyes were blazing now. Not with passion. With anger. With self-loathing. "Look at me, Elena," he growled. "Look at what I am. You spent all day playing house with me. You ate pasta with my mother. You tried on rings. You pretended that this is a fairy tale." He gestured to his shirt. To the blood. "This is the reality. This is what you are marrying." I am not a hero. I am not a romantic pen pal. I am a man who just spent 6 hours breaking bones to prove a point. I flinched. The violence in his voice was a physical weight. "I know what you are," I whispered. "No, you do not." He laughed. It was a cruel sound. "You think you know. You think you can fix me. You think because I saved a bird once that I am a good man. I am not a good man. I am a butcher in a tailored suit." He walked toward me. I wanted to back away, but I forced my feet to stay planted. He stopped inches from me. He smelled like smoke and copper and sweat. It was the scent of violence. "Go to bed," he said again. His voice was lower now. "Dangerous. Before I make you regret staying up." I looked up at him. I looked past the bruise and the bloodshot eyes. I saw the tremor in his hand. "You are shaking," I said. He stiffened. He clenched his hands into fists at his sides to stop them. "Adrenaline," he muttered. "No," I said. "It is not adrenaline. You hate this. You hate what you had to do tonight." He stared at me. His jaw worked tight. "You do not know what I hate. I know you," I insisted. I stepped closer. I reached out and touched his arm. His skin was burning hot. He flinched like I had burned him. He grabbed my wrist. His grip was hard. "Too hard. Do not touch me," he hissed. "Not tonight." "I am not clean tonight, Elena. I do not care. You should care." He roared. He let go of my wrist and shoved past me. He stormed toward the bathroom. I stood there trembling. I heard the shower turn on. I heard him scrubbing. I waited. 10 minutes later, he came out. He was wearing only a pair of black sweatpants. His chest was bare. His hair was wet. He did not look at me. He walked straight to the bedroom. I followed him. He got into bed and pulled the covers up. He turned his back to the center of the room. He lay perfectly still. I walked to the other side of the bed. I slid in. The distance between us felt like miles. The mattress was huge, but the emotional canyon was wider. "Dante," I whispered into the dark. "Go to sleep," he said. His voice was flat. "Dead." I lay there staring at his broad back. I could see the muscles in his shoulders bunched tight with tension. He was a wall. He had shut me out completely. This was the gilded cage. It was not the locked doors or the guards outside. It was this. It was being close enough to touch him but being unable to reach him. He was punishing himself. I realized that. He felt dirty. He felt unworthy. He thought that by pushing me away, he was protecting me from the darkness he carried. He did not understand. I was not afraid of his darkness. I was afraid of him facing it alone. I reached out. I placed my hand on the center of his back. He went rigid. "Stop," he warned. "No," I said. I slid closer. I pressed my chest against his back. I wrapped my arm around his waist. I buried my face between his shoulder blades. He was so hot. He felt like a furnace. I felt a shudder go through him. A massive, full-body tremor. "Elena." He groaned. It sounded like a plea. "Just sleep," I whispered. "I am here. I am not going anywhere." He did not relax. Not at first. He held himself stiffly, fighting the contact. He wanted to push me away. I knew he did. He wanted to prove that he was a monster who did not deserve comfort. But I held on. I held on tight. Slowly. Painfully slowly. The tension began to leave his body. His breathing shifted. It went from shallow and ragged to deep and even. He did not turn around. He did not hold me back. But he did not push me away again. He let me hold him. And in the silence of the penthouse with the lights of the city bleeding through the curtains, I realized something terrifying. I was not just marrying him to save my father. I was not just doing this for the debt. I was falling in love with him. I was falling in love with the butcher who saved birds. And that was going to destroy me. I closed my eyes and listened to the beat of his heart against my ear. It was slow, steady, heavy. Tomorrow I would become his wife. Tomorrow I would make promises to love and cherish a man who thought he was unlovable. I tightened my arm around his waist. Let him try to push me away. I was stubborn too. I fell asleep holding on to the lion, and for the first time in my life I did not dream of running away. I dreamed of staying.
Chapter 10. Dante. I woke up with a numb arm and a heavy chest. It was not the weight of guilt. I knew what that felt like. I had carried that for 5 years. This was different. This was warm. This was soft. Elena was draped over me like a blanket. Her head was resting on my shoulder. Her arm was thrown across my stomach. Her leg was tangled with mine. She was deep asleep, breathing slow, steady puffs of air against my neck. I stared at the ceiling. The sun was just starting to creep through the cracks in the blackout curtains. I should move. I should wake her up. I should tell her to get off me and go back to her side of the bed. I did not move. For the first time in years, I had slept without dreaming of steel bars or blood. The nightmares that usually waited for me in the dark had been kept at bay by the woman drooling on my shoulder. She had held me. I came to bed covered in the stench of violence, and she had not run away. She had held me. She had told me I was shaking. She had anchored me until the adrenaline crashed, and I passed out. It made me feel weak. Adon did not need comfort. Adon stood alone. But looking at her now, seeing her eyelashes resting against her cheek, I did not feel like Adon. I felt like a man who had just found water in a desert. I carefully lifted her arm off my stomach. She murmured something in her sleep and shifted, burrowing her face into the pillow. I slid out from under her. The loss of her warmth was instant and annoying. I walked into the bathroom and turned the shower on, cold. Freezing cold. I stood under the spray until my teeth chattered and my brain cleared. Today was the day. I stepped out and dried off. I shaved. I dressed in a black suit, black tie, black shoes. I looked like I was going to a funeral, not a wedding. It was fitting. I was burying Dante Valenti, the bachelor. I was burying the man who had nothing to lose. From today on, I would have a weakness. A target on my back shaped like a curvy librarian. I walked back into the bedroom. Elena was sitting up. She looked disoriented. Her hair was a mess. The strap of her green silk top had fallen off her shoulder. She saw me and pulled the sheet up to her chin. "Good morning," she whispered. "Morning," I said. My voice was brisk. I was back in control. "Get up, we leave in 40 minutes. She blinked. She looked hurt by my tone. She probably expected softness after last night. She expected the man who let her hold him. That man was gone. That man stayed in the dark. She scrambled out of bed and ran to the bathroom. I waited. 20 minutes later, she came out. She stopped in the doorway. I had ordered the dress 3 days ago. I had never seen it on her. I had only imagined it. My imagination had not done it justice. It was white. Not a stark, bright white, but a soft ivory. It was simple. Long sleeves, a modest neckline. It fitted close to her body, flaring out slightly at the knees. It was elegant. It was classy. And it made my mouth go dry. She was fidgeting with the skirt. "Is it okay?" she asked nervously. "It feels a little bridal." "It is a wedding, Elena," I said, walking over to her. "You are a bride. You are supposed to look bridal. But it's a courthouse," she said. "I feel like I'm playing dress-up. You look perfect." I meant it. She looked like something that belonged on the top of a cake. She looked pure. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "Turn around." She turned. I saw the zipper running down her spine. I fought the urge to pull it down. I opened the box and took out the necklace. It was a single diamond on a thin gold chain. Simple. Expensive. I fastened it around her neck. My fingers grazed her skin. She shivered. "Something old," I said near her ear. "The diamond belonged to my grandmother." She touched the stone. "It's beautiful, Dante." "Thank you." "Something new is the dress," I continued. "Something borrowed is the time we are stealing from your father's debt clock. And something blue." I reached into my pocket again and pulled out a blue garter. She turned around, her eyes wide. "You expect me to wear that?" "Tradition," I said. She blushed, a deep crimson that started at her chest and worked its way up. "I will put it on later," she mumbled. "No," I said. "Now." She stared at me. "You want me to put it on right now? While you watch?" I crossed my arms. "Unless you want me to put it on for you." She snatched the garter from my hand. "Turn around." I turned around. I stared at the wall, but my ears were straining. I heard the rustle of fabric. I heard the snap of elastic. I imagined her lifting her skirt. I imagined her sliding the blue lace up her thigh. My pants felt suddenly tight. "Done," she said. I turned back. She looked flustered. "Let's go," I said before I did something stupid like throw her back onto the bed and ruin the dress. The ride to City Hall was tense. Matteo was driving. 2 other cars of security were flanking us. We were a motorcade of impending doom. Elena held her hands in her lap, twisting the engagement ring. "You are doing it again," I said. "Sorry." She stopped. "Are there going to be a lot of people?" "Just us, Matteo, the judge, and a few witnesses I paid to be there. She nodded. She looked out the window. Dante. What? Are we really doing this? I looked at her profile. She looked scared. Not of me, of the magnitude of it. We are really doing this, I said. Why? She asked quietly. I know what you told me, stability, the commission, but you don't care about them. You are the Don. You do what you want. So why? I looked at the partition between us and the driver. It was up. Matteo couldn't hear us. Because I am selfish, I said. She turned to look at me. What? I am selfish, Elena. I saw something I wanted, and I am taking it. That is what I do. She stared at me, searching for the lie. She didn't find one. The car stopped. We are here, Matteo announced over the intercom. City Hall was gray and busy. People were rushing everywhere, paying fines, getting permits. Nobody looked at us. We were just another couple in formal wear. We took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The judge was waiting in his chambers. He was a short man with a comb-over who owed me a favor from 10 years ago. Ah, Mr. Valenti, he said, sweating slightly. And the lovely bride. Come in. Come in. The room smelled like old coffee and legal paper. It was not romantic. It was transactional. We stood in front of the desk. Matteo stood behind us as the witness. The judge opened a book. We are gathered here today. I tuned him out. I didn't care about the words. I cared about the woman standing next to me. I watched her. Her hands were shaking. She was breathing shallowly. I reached out and took her hand. Her head snapped up. She looked at me. I squeezed her fingers. I've got you. She squeezed back. Do you, Dante Valenti, take this woman? I do, I said. My voice was loud. It filled the small room. It wasn't a question. It was a command. And do you, Elena Rossi? She hesitated. Just for a split second. I do, she whispered. The rings, the judge said. Matteo handed me the gold band. I took Elena's left hand. I slid the ring onto her finger. It sat next to the diamond, heavy and gold. It looked like a shackle. It looked like a promise. She took my ring. Her fingers trembled as she pushed it over my knuckle. It felt strange. I had never worn jewelry. The gold felt hot against my skin. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife, the judge smiled nervously. You may kiss the bride. The room went silent. Elena looked up at me. Her eyes were wide. Panic flickered there. We had a rule. No touching unless she asked. But this was the show. This was the seal. I stepped closer. I saw her breath hitch. Forgive me, I murmured. I cupped her face with both hands. Her skin was soft. Her lips parted slightly in surprise. I lowered my head. I didn't kiss her gently. I didn't give her a peck on the cheek for the audience. I claimed her. I pressed my mouth to hers. She tasted like mint and nerves. I felt her stiffen for a second, and then she melted. Her hands came up to clutch the lapels of my jacket. I groaned low in my throat. The sound vibrated against her lips. I deepened the kiss. I swept my tongue into her mouth, tasting her, owning her. It was electric. It was better than the lasagna. It was better than the whiskey. It was the best thing I had ever tasted. I forgot the judge. I forgot Matteo. I forgot that this was supposed to be a fake marriage. I pulled her body flush against mine. I felt her soft curves pressing into my hardness. Someone cleared their throat. Loudly, I pulled back. Elena was flushed. Her lips were swollen and red. Her eyes were glazed. She looked thoroughly kissed. Good. The judge was looking at his shoes. Matteo was smirking. Congratulations, the judge squeaked. I grabbed Elena's hand. We are leaving, I said. I signed the paper without looking at it. Elena signed hers. We walked out of the office. We walked down the hall to the elevator. The doors closed. We were alone. Elena touched her lips. She looked at me. "You broke the rule," she whispered. I looked at the ring on my finger. Then I looked at her. "I am the Don," I said, pressing the button for the lobby. "I make the rules." But my heart was hammering in my chest. I had kissed her. And the terrifying part was that I wanted to do it again. We walked out to the car. The air felt different. The city felt different. I was a married man, and the woman sitting next to me, looking at her wedding ring like it was an alien artifact, was my wife. My wife. The words tasted dangerous. I signaled the driver. Home. We had a party to get ready for tomorrow. But for today we had the penthouse. And the silence. And I had a feeling the silence was about to get a lot louder.
Chapter 11. Elena. The ring on my finger felt heavier than a shackle. It was gold. It was thick. And it was warm because it had been sitting against Dante's skin before he slid it onto mine. I kept touching it with my thumb. I spun it around. I pressed the metal into my flesh until it left a mark. Mrs. Valenti. The name sounded like a lie. It sounded like a costume I had put on for Halloween that I could not take off. We were back in the penthouse. The sun had set hours ago. The city was a grid of electric light outside the massive windows, but inside it was dark. Dante had not turned on the overhead lights. He preferred the shadows. He moved through them like he was made of them. I stood in the middle of the living room, still wearing the white dress. My feet hurt. My head hurt. My lips still tingled from the kiss he had seared onto them at the courthouse. That kiss. It had not been a performance. I knew what acting felt like. I had watched enough bad movies to know when two people were faking chemistry. That kiss was raw. It was possessive. It tasted like he wanted to devour me whole and leave no crumbs. And I had kissed him back. That was the part that terrified me. I had grabbed his lapels. I had opened my mouth. I had wanted him to take everything. Dante was in the kitchen. He had shed his jacket and tie. His sleeves were rolled up again, revealing the ink on his forearms. He was opening a bottle of wine. The cork popped with a soft sigh that echoed in the quiet room. "Hungry?" he asked without turning around. "I am always hungry," I said automatically. Then I blushed. I mean, yes, I could eat. He turned around holding 2 glasses of dark red wine. He walked over to me. The movement was predatory. Smooth. Silent. "Drink," he said, handing me a glass. "It will help with the nerves." I took the glass. My hand shook slightly and the wine sloshed against the side. "I am not nervous." I lied. He looked at me over the rim of his glass. His eyes were black pools. "You are vibrating, Elena. If you shook any harder, you would shatter that glass." I took a large gulp of wine. It was rich and dry. It warmed my chest instantly. "It has been a long day," I said. "It is not over yet," he murmured. My stomach dropped. Right. The wedding night. The phrase hung in the air between us, unsaid but screaming. We were married. We were alone. There was a massive bed down the hall. I looked at him. He was watching me closely. He was reading the panic in my eyes. Dante set his glass down on the coffee table. "Turn around," he said. I froze. "Why?" "Because you cannot reach the zipper on that dress by yourself, unless you are a contortionist." I flushed. He was right. The zipper went all the way down to the small of my back. I had struggled to get it up this morning. I turned around slowly. I presented my back to him. I held my breath. I felt his presence behind me. I felt the heat radiating off his body. He was standing close. Too close. His fingers brushed the back of my neck. I shivered. "You are cold," he said. "I am fine," I squeaked. He did not unzip the dress immediately. He swept my hair to the side, exposing my neck. His fingertips grazed the sensitive skin there. It was a light touch. Barely there. But it sent shockwaves through my entire nervous system. He leaned in. I felt his breath on my shoulder. "You looked beautiful today," he whispered. "Thank you. I mean it. When I saw you walking toward the judge, I forgot why we were there. I forgot the debt. I forgot the commission. I just saw you." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Just unzip the dress, Dante. Please." He chuckled low and dark, impatient. I heard the sound of the zipper moving. I felt the fabric loosen. The cool air of the penthouse hit my skin as the dress parted. He pulled the zipper down slowly, inch by agonizing inch. His knuckles grazed my spine with every movement. It was torture. It was the most intimate thing I had ever felt. The zipper hit the bottom. The dress hung loose on my frame. "Step out of it," he ordered. I hesitated. Underneath, I was wearing the blue garter he had forced me to put on, and plain cotton underwear because I had refused to wear the thong that came with the silk set. I felt unsexy. I felt exposed. "Dante," I warned. "The rule, I am not touching you," he said. "I am just helping you undress. That is what husbands do." I let the dress fall. It pooled around my feet in a puddle of white fabric. I stood there in my bra and underwear. And the garter. I crossed my arms over my chest, instantly trying to cover myself. "Don't," he said sharp. He walked around to face me. His eyes swept over my body. He looked at the soft curve of my stomach. He looked at my thighs where the blue lace cut into my skin slightly. He did not look critical. He looked obsessed. His gaze burned. It felt physical. Beautiful. He breathed. I looked down at the floor. "I hate my thighs," I whispered. "They touch." He stepped closer. He invaded my space until his shoes touched my bare feet. "Look at me." I looked up. "If I hear you insult yourself one more time, I will punish you," he said. "And you might enjoy the punishment, but I will make sure you remember it." I swallowed hard. "What kind of punishment?" He smirked. "The kind that involves my mouth and your thighs." My brain short-circuited. I stared at him, my mouth opening and closing like a fish. He laughed. He reached out and tapped me under the chin. "Go put on your pajamas, Elena. Before I forget that I promised to be a gentleman." I grabbed the dress from the floor and ran. I literally ran down the hall. I heard his laughter following me. It was a deep, rich sound that made my knees weak. I locked the bathroom door. I leaned against it, breathing hard. He was dangerous. He was playing with me. And the worst part was that I liked it. I changed into the green silk pajamas. They felt like armor now. I brushed my teeth aggressively, trying to scrub the taste of his kiss and the wine out of my mouth. When I walked back into the bedroom, Dante was already in bed. He was reading a book. A physical book, not a tablet. I squinted. It was The Great Gatsby. "You read Fitzgerald?" I asked, stopping at the foot of the bed. He looked up over the top of the book. He was wearing reading glasses, black-rimmed reading glasses. Oh, God. That was unfair. That was a targeted attack on my libido, the tattoos, the muscles, and now reading glasses. He looked like a sexy professor who also killed people for a living. "I have read everything," he said. "Prison libraries are surprisingly well stocked. Fitzgerald understands obsession." He closed the book and set it on the nightstand. He took off the glasses. "Come to bed." I walked to my side of the bed. I pulled back the covers and climbed in. I stayed as close to the edge as possible without falling off. Dante sighed. "Come here." "No," I said. "I am fine here." "Elena, you are going to fall off. Move to the middle." I scooted 1 inch. He groaned. He reached out. His arm wrapped around my waist and he hauled me across the mattress. I yelped as I collided with his side. He was shirtless again. His skin was hot. He felt like a radiator. He did not let go. He kept his arm around me, holding me against him. "This is better," he said, settling back against the pillows. "You are touching me." I pointed out, my voice muffled against his chest. "You are my wife," he said simply. "And it is cold. I am using you for body heat. I am not a space heater. You are warm," he said. "You are soft. You are the most comfortable thing in this room. Now go to sleep." I lay there stiff and awkward. My hand was resting on his chest, right over his heart. I could feel it beating. Thump, thump, thump. It was a steady rhythm. "Dante? Did you mean it? What you said at the courthouse? About being selfish?" He was silent for a long moment. I thought he had fallen asleep. "Yes," he said finally. "Why?" I asked. "Why me? You could have had anyone. You could have had someone who knows this world, someone who isn't afraid of her own shadow." He shifted slightly. His hand moved up and down my back. It was a soothing, rhythmic motion. "You are not afraid of your shadow, Elena. You are afraid of your light." What does that even mean? It means you have spent your whole life making yourself small so you do not bother anyone. You dress to disappear. You talk quietly. You apologize for existing. His hand stopped in the middle of my back. "But in your letters, you were loud. You were angry. You were passionate. You told me you wanted to burn things down. You told me you wanted to be seen." He took a deep breath. "I fell in love with the girl in the letters, Elena. I fell in love with her mind. And when I got out and I saw you, when I saw that you were hiding that fire inside a body that looks like it was made to be worshipped." He paused. "I knew I had to have you. I knew I had to be the one to drag you out of the shadows." I felt tears prick my eyes. I blinked them back furiously. "So this is a rescue mission?" I whispered. "No," he said. His voice was rough. "It is a heist. I stole you, and I am never giving you back." I buried my face in his neck. He smelled like soap and man. "You are crazy," I mumbled. "I am a Valenti," he said. "We are all crazy. It is a genetic condition." I laughed. It was a watery sound, but it was real. He kissed the top of my head. "Sleep, Bella. Tomorrow we have the party. Ma is cooking enough food to feed an army. You will need your strength." "What happens at the party?" I asked. "We show the world that you are mine," he said. "We dance. We eat. And if anyone looks at you the wrong way, I break their fingers." That sounds romantic. It is the most romantic thing I can offer. I closed my eyes. His arm was heavy around me. His heartbeat was a lullaby under my ear. I realized with a jolt that I wasn't scared anymore. Not of him. I was scared of how easy it was to fit into his arms. I was scared of how much I liked the weight of the ring on my finger. I shifted my leg, tangling it with his. "Good night, Dante," I whispered. "Good night, wife," he murmured. I fell asleep before I could overthink it. And for the second night in a row, the nightmares stayed away.
Chapter 12. Dante. The dress was black velvet. It was long. It was tight. It had a slit that went up to her thigh, and a neckline that plunged just enough to make a man lose his train of thought. I stood in the doorway of the bedroom, leaning against the frame with my arms crossed. I was watching my wife put on earrings. She was standing in front of the full-length mirror. She was frowning. She smoothed her hands over her hips for the 10th time in 1 minute. She turned to the side. She sucked in her stomach. She let it out. She sighed. "Stop it," I said. She jumped. She dropped the earring. It bounced on the carpet. "Dante," she gasped. "You scared me. You are picking yourself apart again," I said, walking into the room. "I told you to stop doing that." She bent down to pick up the earring. The slit in the dress opened. I saw a flash of pale, creamy skin. My throat went tight. "I am not picking myself apart," she said, standing up. "I am just adjusting. This dress is very aggressive. It is perfect, I said. I walked up behind her. I looked at our reflection in the mirror. We looked like a power couple. I was in a tuxedo because Ma had insisted on black tie for this party. Elena was in velvet. The contrast was striking. I was hard lines and sharp edges. She was soft curves and deep shadows. I placed my hands on her shoulders. I felt the tension there. Shoulders back, I murmured. She straightened her spine. Her eyes met mine in the glass. They were dark with nerves. Who is going to be there tonight? She asked. Everyone, I said. My cousins, the capos, the wives, the people who think I made a mistake by marrying a librarian instead of a mob princess. She swallowed hard. Great. So it is a roast. And I am the main course. No, I said, sliding my hands down her arms. You are the queen, and anyone who disrespects the queen answers to the king. I felt a shiver run through her. You are really enjoying this whole king and queen metaphor, aren't you? She asked, a small smile tugging at her lips. I am enjoying the fact that you are wearing my ring, I said, lifting her left hand. I am enjoying the fact that everyone in that room is going to know you belong to me. I kissed the side of her neck. Just a graze. A promise. She leaned back against me. Just for a second. Then she pulled away. The lipstick, she said nervously. I have to do my lipstick, and we are going to be late. I let her go. I watched her apply the red paint to her mouth. It was a bright, bold color. War paint. Good. She needed to be ready for war. My family was not easy. Ma loved her, but the rest of them, they were sharks. They would circle. They would test for blood. We took the elevator down to the garage. Matteo was waiting with the car. He looked at Elena and raised an eyebrow. Nice dress, Mrs. Valenti, he said. Thank you, Matteo, she said, climbing into the back seat. At least someone thinks I can pull it off. I got in beside her. I leaned close. Matteo is a paid employee, I said. His opinion does not count. Mine does. And I think you look like sin. She blushed, turning that lovely shade of pink that clashed perfectly with the lipstick. The drive to Ma's house was short. The street was lined with luxury cars. There were security guards at the gate checking names. When we walked in, the noise hit us first. Italian music, laughter, the clinking of glasses, the smell of roasted meat and heavy perfume. The room went silent when we entered. It was the classic movie moment. The music didn't stop, but the conversation did. 50 pairs of eyes turned to look at us. I felt Elena's hand tremble in mine. I squeezed it hard. I've got you. I led her into the room. I did not walk fast. I walked with the slow, arrogant swagger of a man who owns the building. Ma came barreling through the crowd. She was wearing gold sequins. She looked like a disco ball with an attitude. Bella, she shouted, grabbing Elena's face. Look at you. You look like a movie star. Elena smiled, and the tension broke. The room went back to normal. People started talking again. But I saw the looks. I saw my cousin Vinny eyeing Elena's chest. I saw my Aunt Rosa whispering behind her hand to her daughter. I saw the judgment. I kept Elena glued to my side. I introduced her to everyone. This is my wife, Elena. This is Elena, my wife. I said the word wife like a weapon. Elena held her own. She was polite. She was smart. When my Uncle Sal tried to make a joke about books being boring, she countered with a quote from Machiavelli that shut him up instantly. I looked at her with new respect. She was terrified, yes, but she was fighting. Around 10 o'clock, the dancing started. A slow, heavy ballad played through the speakers. I took Elena's glass of wine and set it on a table. Dance with me. I don't dance, Dante, she said, looking at the floor. I have 2 left feet. I will step on you. I have steel-toed shoes. I said. I will survive. I pulled her onto the floor. I wrapped one arm around her waist and pulled her flush against me. I took her other hand in mine. She was stiff at first. She was holding her breath. Relax, I whispered into her hair. Nobody is looking at your feet. They are looking at my hips, she muttered. I can feel them staring. Let them stare, I said. They are jealous. Why would they be jealous? She asked, looking up at me. Half the women in here are a size 2 and wearing Gucci. Because, I said, pulling her closer until there was no air between us. Those women are hungry, Elena. You look like you have tasted life. She blinked. That is a very poetic way of calling me fat. I stopped moving. We were in the middle of the dance floor, but I stopped. I looked down at her. My expression was deadly serious. If you ever say that word again, I will wash your mouth out with soap, I said. She stared at me. I am not joking, I said. You are soft, you are curvy, you are womanly. You are exactly what a man wants to hold in the dark. A man does not want to hold a bag of bones. A man wants something he can grab onto. I moved my hand down her back. I rested it on the swell of her hip. I squeezed. I want to grab onto you. I growled. Her breath hitched. Her eyes dilated. The pupils swallowed the whiskey color. Dante, she whispered. People are watching. I don't care. I resumed the dance. I moved us slower, closer. My thigh brushed between hers with every step. It was torture. I could feel the heat of her body through the velvet. I could smell the vanilla and the expensive perfume I had bought her. I was hard, painfully hard. The song ended. I did not let go. We are leaving? I said. But the cake, she started. Forget the cake, I said. I want something sweeter. I grabbed her hand and dragged her off the dance floor. We said a quick goodbye to Ma, who winked at me knowingly, which was horrifying, but I ignored it. We got into the car. Home. I barked at the driver. The partition went up. I turned to Elena. She was sitting in the corner, breathing fast. She knew. She knew the energy had shifted. The protective husband was gone. The hungry wolf was back. I reached out and pulled her across the seat. She gasped as she landed in my lap. Dante. Shh. I buried my face in her neck. I inhaled her scent. I kissed the sensitive spot right below her ear. You drove me crazy in there. I muttered against her skin. I didn't do anything, she argued. I just stood there and drank wine. You existed, I said. You wore that dress. You let me touch you on the dance floor. I ran my hand up her thigh. The velvet was soft, but her skin was softer. I found the slit. My fingers brushed bare flesh. She shuddered. Her hands gripped my shoulders. The rule, she whispered. Her voice was shaky. You said, no touching unless I asked. I bit her neck, gently, just enough to make her gasp. I am breaking the rule, I said, unless you tell me to stop. I pulled back. I looked her in the eye. Tell me to stop, Elena. Tell me you don't want this. Tell me to put you back on your side of the seat and drive home in silence. She stared at me. Her chest was heaving. Her lips were parted. I waited. If she said stop, I would stop. It would kill me. I would probably have to jump out of the moving car to cool off. But I would stop. She didn't say stop. She reached up, her fingers tangled in my hair. Don't stop, she whispered. The dam broke. I kissed her. I devoured her. I kissed her like I had been starving for 5 years, and she was the only meal left on earth. She kissed me back with equal desperation. She made a small whimper in her throat that drove me insane. I wanted to take her right there in the back of the car. I wanted to rip that expensive dress in half, but I forced myself to stop. Not here. I panted, pulling away. Not with an audience. I adjusted her dress covering her leg. I smoothed her hair. We sat in silence for the rest of the ride. It was a vibrating electric silence. We held hands. Her grip was tight. My thumb stroked her knuckles. The car stopped at the building. We walked through the lobby. We did not look at the guards. We did not look at the cameras. We got into the elevator. I pinned her against the mirrored wall before the doors even closed. I kissed her again. Hard. Deep. The elevator dinged. I dragged her into the penthouse. I kicked the door shut and locked it. I didn't turn on the lights. The city lights were enough. I backed her toward the bedroom. I was kissing her neck, her jaw, her throat. My hands were everywhere. We reached the bed. I stopped. I stepped back. She looked at me confused, bereft. "Undress," I said. My voice was a command. "Dante," she hesitated. Her old insecurity flickered in her eyes. "The lights are on. You can see everything." "I want to see everything," I said. "I want to see what is mine." She took a deep breath. She reached for the zipper. She struggled with it. I stepped forward and batted her hands away. "Allow me." I unzipped the dress. I peeled it off her shoulders. It fell to the floor. She was wearing black lace underneath, a bra that pushed her up and panties that hid nothing. I groaned. It was a sound of pure agony. "You're killing me," I said. I fell to my knees. She gasped, looking down at me. "Dante, what are you doing?" "Worshipping," I said. I pressed a kiss to her stomach, right over the soft curve she hated so much. I kissed her hip. I kissed her thigh. She tried to cover herself. She tried to hide. I grabbed her wrists and pulled them away. "No," I said, looking up at her. "Look at me." She looked down. Tears were swimming in her eyes. "Why do you like it?" she whispered. "It's just fat." "It is you," I said fiercely. "It is softness. It is woman. It is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." I stood up. I towered over her. I stripped off my jacket, my tie, my shirt. I threw them on the floor. I took her face in my hands. "I am going to make love to you, Elena," I said. "And I am going to touch every single inch of you until you forget to be ashamed. I am going to make you love your body as much as I do." I kissed her. I lifted her up. She wrapped her legs around my waist. I carried her to the bed. I laid her down on the gray sheets. She looked like a pearl against the dark fabric. I climbed over her. I kept my promise. I touched her everywhere. I kissed every scar, every curve, every roll. I whispered praise against her skin until she was sobbing, not from sadness, but from relief. From the sheer, overwhelming feeling of being seen and adored. When we finally joined together, it was not just sex, it was a collision. It was the librarian and the convict, the light and the dark. She wrapped her legs around me tight. She arched her back. She cried out my name, "Dante, Dante, Dante." It was the only prayer I would ever need. I moved with her. I lost myself in her. For the first time in my life, I was not empty. I was full. Afterwards, we lay tangled in the sheets, sweating and panting. Elena was curled against my side. Her head was on my chest. She traced one of my tattoos with her finger. "Dante? You were right." "About what?" "The dress." She said, sleepy and satisfied. "It was easy to take off." I laughed. I kissed the top of her head. "Sleep, wife. You have a long day tomorrow." "Why?" she asked, yawning. "Because," I said, tightening my arm around her soft waist, "I plan on keeping you in this bed until noon." She giggled. It was the best sound in the world. I closed my eyes. The city lights twinkled outside. The war was still out there. The Russians were still coming. The debt was still a memory. But in here in the dark, with my wife in my arms, I was at peace. I was finally home.
Chapter 13. Elena. I woke up reaching for him. My hand slid across the gray silk sheets, expecting warm skin and hard muscle. Instead, I found cold fabric. I opened my eyes. The space beside me was empty. The pillow was indented where his head had been, but the heat was gone. Dante was gone. I sat up, pulling the sheet against my chest. My body felt heavy and sore in a way that made me blush. Images from the night before flashed through my mind. The black velvet dress pooling on the floor. The look in his eyes when he told me to worship my own body. The way he had touched me like I was made of gold. For a few hours in the dark, I had forgotten who he was. I had forgotten the debt and the guns and the guards outside the door. I had just been a woman in the arms of her husband. But the daylight brought the reality back. I looked at the nightstand. There was a note. It was written on heavy cardstock in sharp, angular handwriting. Business. Do not leave the apartment. I will call you. Business. That one word carried so much weight. It meant violence. It meant danger. It meant he was out there doing things that would give me nightmares if I saw them. I got out of bed and walked to the window. The city looked gray today. Clouds were hanging low over the skyscrapers, suffocating the skyline. I showered and dressed. I didn't put on the silk pajamas. I put on a pair of jeans and a sweater that Dante had bought for me. It was cashmere, soft and warm, but it felt like a costume. I missed my old oversized cardigan. I missed my armor. The day passed in a blur of anxiety. I tried to read. I picked up The Great Gatsby from the nightstand where Dante had left it, but I couldn't focus on the words. I kept staring at the phone sitting on the coffee table. It didn't ring. I paced the living room. I cleaned the kitchen even though it was already spotless. I reorganized the bookshelf by color, then by author, then by genre. By 6 o'clock, the silence in the penthouse was deafening. I called Matteo. It went straight to voicemail. I called Dante. It rang and rang and rang until the automated operator told me the subscriber was unavailable. My stomach twisted into a knot. Something was wrong. I knew it in my bones. I felt it the way you feel a storm coming before the first drop of rain falls. The air pressure in the apartment felt heavy. At 8 o'clock, the elevator chimed. I jumped off the couch and ran to the hallway. The doors slid open. Dante didn't walk out. He stumbled out. He was leaning heavily against Matteo. His left arm was draped over Matteo's shoulders. His suit jacket was gone. His white shirt was soaked in red. My hands flew to my mouth to stifle a scream. Get him to the couch. Matteo grunted. He was straining under Dante's weight. I snapped out of my paralysis. I ran forward. What happened? I demanded, grabbing Dante's other arm to help support him. Ambush, Matteo said grimly. Jersey. We dragged him to the living room. We lowered him onto the white leather sofa. He landed with a groan that sounded wet and painful. Blood smeared instantly onto the pristine white leather. It was a shocking contrast. I need the first aid kit, Matteo barked. Master bathroom, under the sink. I ran. I didn't think. I just moved. I sprinted to the bathroom, tore open the cabinet, and grabbed the red metal box. I ran back. Matteo was already cutting Dante's shirt open with a pocket knife. Dante's eyes were open, but they were glazed. He looked at me. He tried to smile. It was a terrifying grimace. Hey, wife, he rasped. You are still dressed. Shut up, I said, dropping to my knees beside him. Just shut up, Dante. Matteo peeled the fabric away. I gasped. There was a gash on his side just above his hip. It was deep. It was ugly. The skin was torn and raw. It wasn't a bullet hole. It looked like he had been sliced with something sharp. Knife? I asked, my voice shaking. Glass, Matteo said. A window blew out. A shard caught him. It missed the kidney, but it's deep. Does he need a hospital? I asked, reaching for the gauze. No hospitals? Dante gritted out. His teeth were clenched tight. No police. We handle this in-house. You are losing a lot of blood. I argued, pressing a pad of gauze against the wound. My hands were covered in his blood. It was warm and sticky. The metallic smell filled my nose, making me gag, but I swallowed it down. I couldn't be squeamish. Not now. It looks worse than it is. Dante lied. He hissed a breath as I applied pressure. Matteo, hand me the disinfectant, I ordered. Matteo looked at me. He looked surprised by the steel in my voice. He handed me the bottle. This is going to hurt. I told Dante, do it, he said. He gripped the arm of the sofa so hard the leather creaked. I poured the liquid over the wound. Dante roared. It was a guttural animal sound. His back arched off the sofa. His muscles seized. I kept my hand steady, pressing the gauze down hard. Sorry, I whispered. I'm sorry. He collapsed back against the cushions, panting. Sweat beaded on his forehead, mixing with the grime and blood. Matteo, do you know how to stitch? I asked. Matteo shook his head. I break things, Mrs. Valenti. I don't fix them. Usually we call the doc, but he is in the Bronx dealing with the other guys. I looked at the wound. It was gaping. It needed to be closed. Give me the needle, I said. Dante opened his eyes. He looked at me with foggy confusion. Elena, no. I can do it, I said. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. I used to sew my own clothes. Skin is just fabric. Tougher fabric. You are going to pass out, Dante said weakly. I am not going to pass out, I said. I am going to sew you up, because if I don't, you are going to bleed out on this very expensive couch, and I am not scrubbing this stain out alone. Matteo handed me the sterile needle and thread from the kit. I took a deep breath. Hold him down, I told Matteo. Matteo put his hands on Dante's shoulders. I leaned in. The first puncture was the hardest. The skin was resistant. I had to push. Dante flinched violently. Stay still, I murmured. Please stay still. I worked quickly. I tried not to think about the fact that I was pushing a needle through my husband's flesh. I focused on the mechanical action. In, out, tie, in, out, tie. Dante stopped fighting after the third stitch. He stared at the ceiling, breathing through his nose. His face was pale, grayish-white. I put in 10 stitches. When I tied the final knot, I slumped back, sitting on my heels. I felt lightheaded. The room spun for a second. Good job, Matteo said quietly. He looked at me with something new in his eyes. Respect. I taped a bandage over the stitches. Is he going to be okay? I asked, wiping my bloody hands on a towel. He is tough, Matteo said. He has had worse. He just needs sleep. And fluids. Matteo stood up. I have to go back to the warehouse. We have a mess to clean up. Will you be okay here? I looked at Dante. He was watching me through half-lidded eyes. We will be fine, I said. Matteo nodded. He checked his gun, tucked it back into his holster, and left. The apartment was quiet again. But now it smelled like blood and antiseptic. I went to the kitchen and filled a glass with water. I brought it back to the couch. Drink, I said, holding it to Dante's lips. He lifted his head slightly and took a few sips. Then he dropped back against the cushion. You stitched me up, he murmured. He sounded amazed. I did, I said. My librarian wife. He chuckled, but it turned into a cough. He winced, clutching his side. Stop talking, I said. You need to rest. Help me up. He said no. You are staying on the couch. I am not sleeping on the couch, he said stubbornly. I want my bed. You can't walk. Watch me. He tried to sit up. His face went white. He fell back. Okay, I said. Okay, just give it a minute. I sat on the floor next to the couch. I rested my head against the cushion near his shoulder. I was so scared, I whispered. I called you. You didn't answer. I was a little busy, he said. Who did this? The Russians, he said. They set a trap. They knew we were coming. I looked at him. Is it a war? It is starting to look like one. I closed my eyes. A war, I was married to a man in the middle of a war. Why did you come back here? I asked. If it is dangerous, why didn't you go to a safe house? He turned his head to look at me. His hand moved slowly, reaching out to touch my hair. His fingers were stained with dried blood, but I didn't pull away. Because you are here, he said softly. That is exactly why you should have stayed away, I said, tears stinging my eyes. You could have led them here. No, he said. We lost them in the tunnel. I came back because if I was going to bleed out, I wanted the last thing I saw to be you. The air left my lungs. Do not say that. I sobbed. Do not talk like you are dying. I am not dying, he said, stroking my hair, thanks to you. You were brave, Elena. Most people vomit when they see that much blood. I wanted to, I admitted, but I was more afraid of losing you than I was of the blood. He was quiet for a long time. His fingers continued to stroke my hair rhythmically. I am sorry, he said finally. For what? For dragging you into this, for making you see this. You should be shelving books. You should be worrying about late fees. You should not be stitching up knife wounds in a penthouse. I chose this. I said, lifting my head to look at him. I said I do. You said I do to save your father. He reminded me. Maybe at first, I said. But yesterday was not about my father. He looked at me, his dark eyes searching mine. No, he agreed. Yesterday was about us. He shifted, trying to get comfortable. He hissed in pain again. We need to get you to bed, I said, standing up. I wrapped his arm around my shoulders. He was heavy, dead weight. I wrapped my arm around his waist, careful to avoid the bandage. On 3. 1, 2, 3. We heaved him up. He groaned, swaying on his feet. I braced my legs, taking as much of his weight as I could. We shuffled down the hallway. It took forever. Every step was a battle. We finally reached the bedroom. I helped him sit on the edge of the bed. I knelt down and took off his shoes. I helped him peel off his ruined trousers, leaving him in his boxer briefs. I helped him lie back against the pillows. He looked exhausted. His skin was gray against the dark sheets. Thank you, he whispered. I went to the bathroom and washed my hands. I scrubbed them until the water ran clear, until the red was gone. I stared at myself in the mirror. I looked different. My eyes looked older. Harder. I wasn't just a librarian anymore. I was a mafia wife. I was a woman who could sew up a wound and keep a secret. I walked back into the bedroom. I climbed into bed next to him. I didn't touch him, not wanting to hurt him, but I lay close enough that I could feel his heat. He reached out blindly, seeking my hand. I took it. Stay. He mumbled, his eyes closing. Always. I whispered. He fell asleep quickly, his breathing heavy and ragged. I stayed awake. I watched the rise and fall of his chest. I watched the shadows move across the room. The mask had slipped. I had seen the violence. I had seen the blood. And I hadn't run. I squeezed his hand tight. The war was here. And I was going to fight it with him.
Chapter 14. Dante Pain has a flavor. It tastes like copper and old iron. I woke up with that taste in my mouth. My side felt like it was on fire. Every breath was a negotiation with my ribs. I tried to shift my weight, and a sharp, white-hot spike drove through my waist, making me hiss through my teeth. I stopped moving. I waited for the room to stop spinning. I looked to my left. Elena was asleep in the chair next to the bed. She was curled up in a ball, her head resting on her knees. She was wearing the cashmere sweater I bought her. Her hair was messy. Her face was pale. I looked at her hands. They were clean now, but in my mind I could still see them covered in my blood. I could see her holding the needle. I could see the steel in her eyes as she pushed it through my skin. She had saved me. And because she saved me, she was in danger. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I reached for it, gritting my teeth against the pull of the stitches. It was Matteo. We have a problem. I am outside the door. I stared at the screen. A problem. In my life, a problem usually meant a body count. I looked at Elena again. She looked so peaceful. She looked like she belonged in a library surrounded by books, and silence, not in a penthouse surrounded by guards and blood. I slowly swung my legs out of bed. The pain was blinding, but I shoved it down into a dark box in my mind. I stood up. I swayed. I grabbed the nightstand to steady myself. I walked to the bedroom door. I opened it quietly. Matteo was standing in the hallway. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He had dark circles under his eyes and a grim expression that told me everything I needed to know. "Report," I said. My voice was a gravelly whisper. "We found the guy who set up the ambush," Matteo said, keeping his voice low. "A low-level runner for the Russians. We had a conversation. He talked. And? He said they weren't just looking for the cargo, Dante. They were looking for leverage." I felt a cold chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the blood loss. "What kind of leverage?" Matteo hesitated. He looked past me into the bedroom where Elena was sleeping. "They have photos, Dante. Photos of her coming out of the library. Photos of her at the market. Photos of us at the courthouse." I closed my eyes. "They know who she is." "Yes," Matteo said. "The order was to take the cargo and, if possible, take the wife. They know you married her. They know she is your weakness, my weakness. Ma had warned me. She said if I hid her, people would think she was a weakness. I didn't hide her. I showed her off. I put her in a red dress and danced with her in front of the whole city. And now the wolves had her scent." "Is the building secure?" I asked. "Triple guard," Matteo said. "But Dante, if they really want her, they will keep coming. They will burn the city down to get to her, just to get to you." "I know," I said. I looked back at Elena. She stirred in her sleep, making a soft sound. I remembered last night. I remembered her saying, "I chose this." She didn't know what she chose. She chose a fairy tale version of danger. She chose the thrill. She didn't choose the reality of being hunted. She didn't choose to be a pawn in a war between crime families. If she stayed, she would die. It was a mathematical certainty. The Russians were ruthless. They wouldn't just kill her. They would use her to break me. They would hurt her in ways that would make death a mercy. I couldn't let that happen. I turned back to Matteo. "Get the car ready," I said. "We are going somewhere?" Matteo asked, confused. "You can barely walk, boss." "Not us," I said. "Her." Matteo's eyes widened. "You are sending her away? I am cutting her loose, but she stitched you up. She stayed." "That is why she has to go," I said, my voice hardening. "Because she stayed, because she cares, and because I stopped. I couldn't say the words. I couldn't say, because I love her. Saying it out loud made it a weapon. "Just get the car ready," I said. "Pack a bag, put 50,000 cash in it, and have the driver ready to take her to her cousin's place in Jersey." Matteo looked at me for a long moment. He saw the pain in my eyes. He nodded slowly. "You are going to break her heart, Dante. Better her heart than her neck," I said. Matteo turned and walked away. I stood there in the hallway for a minute, breathing through the pain. I had to do this. I had to be the monster she thought I was in the beginning. I had to make her hate me. Because if she hated me, she would leave. If she loved me, she would try to stay, and she would get killed. I walked back into the bedroom. I walked over to the chair. "Elena," I said. She woke up instantly. She sat up, rubbing her eyes. "Dante? You're up. You shouldn't be walking. Your stitches—" "I am fine," I said. My voice was cold, dead. She stood up, reaching for me. Let me help you back to bed. Do you need water? Do you need pain meds? I stepped back, avoiding her touch. I don't need anything from you, I said. She froze. Her hand hovered in the air. She looked confused. What? I said I don't need anything, I said. She blinked. Are you in pain? Is that why you're snapping at me? I am not snapping, Elena. I am talking. I walked over to the window. I turned my back to her. I couldn't look at her face while I did this. Pack your things, I said. She was silent. The silence stretched until it felt like a wire pulled tight enough to snap. Pack my things? She repeated slowly. For what? Are we going to a safe house? No, I said. You are leaving. Leaving? Where? Back to your apartment. Or your cousin's. I don't care. Just away from here. I heard her footsteps. She walked up behind me. Dante, I don't understand. Is this because of the attack? Are you trying to protect me? Because I told you I'm not afraid. I stitched you up. I'm here. I can handle this. You can't handle this, I said, spinning around. I saw the hurt in her eyes. It was already starting. This isn't a game, Elena. This isn't a romance novel. This is real life. And frankly, I am done. She stared at me. Done. I am bored, I said. The lie tasted like acid on my tongue. Bored, she whispered. Yes, I said. I thought I wanted this. I thought I wanted the wife, the domestic life. I thought it would be amusing to take the librarian and turn her into a queen. I walked toward her, forcing her to back up. But the novelty has worn off, I said. You are cloying, Elena. You are always there, hovering, watching, with those big, sad eyes. It is exhausting. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked like I had slapped her, but last night, she stammered, the stitches, you let me hold you. You said, I was bleeding out, I said, brutally. I was delirious. A man says a lot of things when he thinks he might die. It doesn't mean they are true in the morning. Tears welled up in her eyes, big, heavy tears that spilled over and ran down her cheeks. You're lying, she whispered. You are lying to push me away. I laughed. It was a harsh, cruel sound that hurt my ribs. Am I? Look at me, Elena. Look at who I am. I am a criminal. I am a user. I used you to get Ma off my back. I used you to look stable for the commission. And I used you to warm my bed because it gets cold in here. I stepped closer, invading her space. And I admit the sex was good. You were enthusiastic for a virgin. But even that gets old. She flinched. That one landed. That one drew blood. She wrapped her arms around herself, hugging her chest like she was trying to hold herself together. So the debt is paid? She asked, her voice trembling. Consider it paid, I said. Your father is clear. You are clear. Take the ring off. Leave it on the dresser. Mateo has a bag of cash for you. It should cover your rent for a year. Call it severance pay. Severance pay. She looked at me with such devastation that I almost broke. I almost fell to my knees and begged her forgiveness. I almost told her that I loved her more than my own life. But then I thought of the Russians. I thought of what they would do to her. I held my ground. I kept my face like stone. She stared at me for a long time. She was searching for a crack in the mask. She was looking for the Dante who had kissed her scars. She didn't find him. I had buried him deep. Okay, she whispered. She didn't scream. She didn't fight. She just broke. She walked over to the dresser. She struggled with the ring. Her fingers were shaking so badly she could barely get it over her knuckle. Finally, it came off. She set it down on the wood. The heavy gold clinked softly. She turned to face me. She looked smaller. She looked like the girl I had met in the library. The light was gone from her eyes. I hope it was worth it, she said softly. What? I asked. The silence, she said. I hope the silence is worth it, Dante. Because you are going to be very lonely in this big glass box. She walked past me. She walked into the closet. I listened to her packing. I heard the zipper of the duffel bag. I heard her footsteps. She walked out of the bedroom. She didn't look back. I stood there frozen. I heard the front door open. I heard Matteo say something to her. I heard her murmur a reply. I heard the door close. The click of the lock was the loudest sound I had ever heard. She was gone. The adrenaline that had been holding me up crashed. My knees buckled. I fell to the floor, gripping my side. I roared. I grabbed the lamp from the nightstand and threw it across the room. It smashed against the wall, shattering into 1,000 pieces. I grabbed the book, The Great Gatsby, and threw it. I screamed until my throat was raw. It was over. She was safe. She hated me, but she was safe. I crawled over to the window. I pulled myself up. I looked down at the street. I saw the black car pull away from the curb. I watched it merge into traffic. I watched it until it was just a speck of red taillights in the gray morning. I pressed my forehead against the glass. Goodbye, wife, I whispered. Then I turned away from the window. Now that she was gone, I had work to do. The Russians had threatened my heart. Now I was going to tear theirs out.
Chapter 15. Elena. My apartment smelled like lemon pledge and loneliness. It was the same smell it had always had. Before Dante. Before the red dress. Before I knew what it felt like to be touched as if I were something holy. But now the smell made me gag. I sat on the edge of my twin bed. It felt small. The mattress was lumpy. The sheets were cotton, not silk, and they felt rough against my skin. 3 days. I had been back for 3 days. On the floor near the door sat the duffel bag Matteo had given me. It was unzipped. Inside were stacks of $100 bills. $50,000. Severance pay. The price of a wife. I stared at it. I hated it. I wanted to take it outside and set it on fire. I wanted to watch the face of Benjamin Franklin turn to ash. I stood up and walked to the kitchenette. My fridge was empty, except for a carton of expired milk and a jar of pickles. I wasn't hungry. My appetite, the one thing Dante had loved so much, had vanished the moment the elevator doors closed on his face. I walked to the bathroom. The mirror was cracked in the corner. I looked at myself. I looked tired. My eyes were puffy. My skin was pale. I was wearing my old oversized sweatpants and a t-shirt that had a hole in the shoulder. I looked like the girl I used to be. The invisible girl. But I didn't feel like her. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. I turned on the faucet and splashed cold water on my face. I am bored. His voice echoed in my head. It played on a loop. Cold. Cruel. Dismissive. I thought I wanted this. The novelty has worn off. I scrubbed my face hard, trying to wash the words away. They hurt. They hurt worse than a physical blow. Because for a few days I had believed. I had believed the letters were real. I had believed the way he looked at me in the dark was real. But he said it was all a lie. He said he was a user. I grabbed a towel and dried my face. I looked at my reflection again. Was it a lie? I thought about the night he came home bleeding. I thought about the way he gripped my hand. I thought about the desperation in his voice when he said, "I wanted the last thing I saw to be you." A man who is bored does not say that. A man who is using you for an image does not drag himself home half dead just to see your face. I lowered the towel. He lied. The realization hit me so hard I stumbled back against the doorframe. He lied. He didn't send me away because he was bored. He didn't send me away because I was cloying. He sent me away because of the ambush. He sent me away because he was scared. My heart started to pound. slow, angry rhythm. He made me hate him so I would leave. He broke my heart to save my life. It was noble. It was tragic. It was exactly the kind of stupid, self-sacrificing thing the man from the letters would do. And it made me furious. Who gave him the right? Who gave him the right to decide for me? Who gave him the right to treat me like a child who couldn't handle the dark? I told him I chose this. I told him I wasn't afraid. And he didn't listen. I walked back into the main room. I looked at the bag of money again. Now it didn't look like a payoff. It looked like an apology. I am not a damsel, I said to the empty room. I walked over to the closet. I pulled out the garment bag I had taken with me. The only thing I had taken. I unzipped it. The red dress. I touched the fabric. It was soft. Heavy. I stripped off my sweatpants. I stripped off the t-shirt. I put on the dress. It was hard to zip up by myself, but I managed. I pulled it up. I smoothed it down over my hips. I looked in the cracked mirror. There she was. The woman Dante Valenti had created. The woman who took up space. The woman who had fire in her veins. He thought he could just send her back? He thought he could turn me back into a mouse just by saying some mean words. He was wrong. I went to my makeup bag. I dug through the bottom until I found it. The tube of red lipstick. I applied it. My hands were steady. I pressed my lips together. I am not done, Dante, I whispered to the reflection. I grabbed my purse. I didn't take the money. I left the $50,000 sitting on the floor. I didn't want his money. I wanted answers. I walked out of the apartment. It was late afternoon. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the Queen's sidewalk. The air was crisp. Cool. I needed to think. I needed a plan. I couldn't just march back to the penthouse. The guards wouldn't let me in. Dante wouldn't let me in. I needed to force his hand. I started walking toward the subway. I would go to the library. I had a key. I could use the computers there to research. I could look up the Russians. I could find out who attacked him. If I had information, maybe he would listen. It was a reckless plan. It was a dangerous plan. But I was done being safe. Safe was lonely. I turned the corner onto a quieter street. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. It was a familiar sensation. I had felt it in the library stacks right before Dante appeared. The feeling of being watched. I stopped. I looked around. The street was empty. A few parked cars. A cat sitting on a stoop. Paranoid, I told myself. You are just jumpy. I kept walking. I quickened my pace. My heels clicked loudly on the concrete. A van turned the corner behind me. A black van. My stomach dropped. I walked faster. The van slowed down. It was crawling along the curb, keeping pace with me. I gripped my purse strap. Run. The instinct screamed at me. I started to run. I wasn't fast. The dress was tight and the heels were high. I scrambled toward the bodega at the end of the block. Lights. People. Safety. The van accelerated. It screeched past me and cut inward, blocking the sidewalk. The side door slid open. 3 men jumped out. They were big. They were wearing ski masks. They moved with terrifying speed. I turned to run the other way. A 4th man was already there. He had come up behind me on foot. I didn't have time to scream. He grabbed me, his arm clamped around my waist, lifting me off the ground. I kicked. I fought. I raked my nails down his arm. "Let me go!" I shouted. A hand clamped over my mouth. It tasted like leather gloves. "Shut up." A voice hissed in my ear. Heavy accent. Russian. They dragged me toward the van. I thrashed. I bit the gloved hand. The man swore and loosened his grip for a second. I screamed, "Dante!" It was a useless scream. He was miles away. He was in his glass tower thinking I was safe. Thinking he had fixed everything. Something sharp pricked my neck. A needle. Cold liquid flooded my veins. My legs went heavy. My vision blurred. The streetlight stretched into long streaks of light. They threw me into the back of the van. I landed on a metal floor. It smelled like oil and old blood. The door slammed shut. Darkness swallowed me. My last thought as the drugs pulled me under wasn't fear. It wasn't regret. It was anger. Idiot, I thought sluggishly. You stupid noble idiot. You didn't save me. You just left me alone in the dark, and now the wolves had me.
Chapter 16. Dante. The silence in the penthouse was exactly what I asked for. It was heavy. It was cold. It was absolute. I sat on the floor in the living room leaning back against the white sofa. The leather behind me was stained with dried blood, my blood. The bandage on my side was throbbing a steady drumbeat of pain, but I didn't care. The pain was grounding. It was the only thing telling me I was still alive. 3 days. She had been gone for 3 days. I had spent those 3 days drinking expensive scotch and staring at the spot on the floor where she had stood in her red dress. I had spent them convincing myself that I was a genius, a martyr. I saved her. I told the empty room, she is safe. She hates me, but she is safe. I took a sip of the amber liquid. It tasted like ash. I checked my watch. It was 6 in the evening. Matteo was supposed to check in. I had assigned a tail to Elena. 2 guys in a sedan parked down the street from her apartment. They were not supposed to interact. They were just supposed to watch, to make sure the Russians didn't get any ideas. I was not careless. I cut her loose, but I didn't leave her defenseless. My phone sat on the floor next to the bottle. It rang. The sound shattered the silence like a hammer hitting glass. I stared at it. Matteo. I picked it up. Report, I said. My voice was rusty from disuse. There was silence on the other end. Not a quiet silence. A chaotic silence. Heavy breathing, sirens in the distance, someone shouting. Dante. Matteo's voice was broken. It was a sound I had never heard from him. He sounded like a man who was looking at a ghost. What happened? I asked. I sat up straighter. The stitches in my side pulled tight. I am sorry, Matteo choked out. I am so sorry, Dante. My blood turned to ice. Say it, I commanded. We found the tail, Matteo said. Both of them. They were executed, shot in the car. And Elena? Silence. Where is Elena? I roared. I stood up, ignoring the agony in my waist. Gone, Matteo whispered. Her apartment is empty. The door was unlocked. Her purse was on the street a block away. Witnesses say a black van, 3 men, masked. The phone slipped from my hand. It hit the floor with a dull thud. The world tilted on its axis. The penthouse walls seemed to bend inward. The air left the room. Gone. A black van. Masks. Russians. I had done it. I had sent her away. I had forced her out of the fortress. I had stripped her of my protection. I had handed her to them on a silver platter. I thought I was saving her. I was wrong. I was so arrogant. I was so stupid. I fell to my knees. The impact jarred my wound, and fresh blood started to seep through the bandage. I didn't feel it. I screamed. It wasn't a word. It was a raw animal sound of pure rage and grief. I punched the floor. I punched the marble until my knuckles split and my hand was a ruin. They had her. The monsters had her. My wife. My soft, sweet, brave wife. The woman who cried during sad movies. The woman who stitched me up with shaking hands. They had her. And it was my fault. I stayed on the floor for 10 seconds. That was all the time I allowed myself to break. Then the switch flipped. The grief vanished. The guilt vanished. The fear vanished. Something else took its place. It was cold. It was black. It was the thing that lived in the deepest part of my soul. The thing I had tried to hide from her. The beast. I stood up. I walked to the bedroom. I didn't limp. I didn't stagger. I walked with purpose. I opened the safe in the closet. I took out my shoulder holster. I strapped it on over my t-shirt. I loaded 2 Glocks. I shoved extra magazines into my pockets. I took out a knife, a long serrated blade. I walked back to the living room. I picked up the phone. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. Matteo was still on the line. He was breathing hard, waiting for the explosion. "Matteo," I said. My voice was dead calm. "I am here, boss. Mobilize everyone." "Everyone?" "Everyone," I said. "Every soldier, every associate, every street runner. I want the city on lockdown. I want every Russian business surrounded. I want every warehouse kicked in." "Dante, this is war. Total war." "Yes," I said. "If we do this, if we go scorched earth, there is no coming back. The commission will hang us. The police will come down on us. I don't care," I said. "Let them come. I will kill them too." I walked to the elevator. "Find the van," I ordered. "Check the traffic cams, check the tolls, find out where they took her." "We are trying, Dante, but—" "Do not try," I snarled. "Do it. If you do not have a location in 20 minutes, I will start killing Russians at random until someone talks." I hung up. I took the elevator down to the garage. My reflection in the mirrored doors stared back at me. I looked like death. My eyes were black holes. My face was pale. My shirt was stained with fresh blood from my side. I didn't recognize myself. I wasn't Dante Valenti anymore. I wasn't a man. I was a weapon. I got into my car. Not the SUV with the driver. My car. A black muscle car with an engine that sounded like a thunderstorm. I tore out of the garage. I didn't know where I was going yet. I just drove. I drove toward the Russian territory in Brighton Beach. My phone buzzed. A picture message. Unknown number. I pulled over. My hands were shaking. Not from fear, from the need to kill. I opened the message. It was a photo. It was Elena. She was tied to a chair. Her head was lolling to the side. Her hair was messy. There was a bruise forming on her cheek. She was wearing the red dress. The dress I loved. The dress she wore to show me she was strong. Under the photo was a text. "Bring the leverage. Bring the territory deeds. Or we send her back in pieces." I stared at the photo. She was alive. That was the only thing that mattered. She was alive. I memorized the background of the photo. Concrete walls. Water. Stains. A small window high up covered in bars. I knew that place. It wasn't a warehouse. It was an old meatpacking plant near the docks. The Volkov brothers used it for disposal. They were stupid. They thought they were negotiating. They thought I was a businessman. They thought I would trade land for my wife. They didn't understand. I wasn't coming to trade. I was coming to end them. I threw the phone onto the passenger seat. I floored the gas pedal. The tires smoked. The car launched forward. "Hold on, Elena," I whispered. I touched the ring on my finger. The gold band she had put there. "I am coming, and God help anyone who stands in my way."
Chapter 17. Elena. My head felt like it had been split open with an axe. I woke up to the smell of rust and rotting meat. It was a thick, oily scent that coated the back of my throat. I tried to move my hands, but I couldn't. They were zip-tied behind my back. My ankles were taped to the legs of a heavy metal chair. I opened my eyes. The room was concrete. It was cold. There was a single bulb hanging from the ceiling, swaying slightly and casting long shadows against the water-stained walls. I was not alone. 3 men were standing near the heavy steel door. They were speaking Russian. They were laughing. They were cleaning their guns. I knew one of them. The one with the scar on his neck. He was the one who had grabbed me on the street. The one who had injected me. I forced myself to breathe. Panic was knocking at the door of my mind. It wanted to kick the door down and scream. It wanted to cry, but I could not panic. Panic was a luxury. Panic would get me killed. I thought of Dante. I thought of the way he looked when he walked into a room, the way he assessed threats, the way he stood tall even when he was bleeding. Fear keeps you alive. Ma had said that. I used the fear. I sharpened it. I sat up straighter in the chair. The movement caught the attention of the man in charge. He turned around. He was older. He wore a suit that was too shiny and gold rings on every finger. "Ah, the sleeping beauty is awake," he said. His English was thick and wet. I stared at him. I did not blink. "Where is my husband?" I asked. My voice was raspy but steady. "Your husband is deciding how much you are worth," the man said, walking toward me. We sent him a picture. We asked for a trade, his territory for his wife. "He won't trade," I said. The man laughed. He leaned down, his face inches from mine. He smelled like vodka and stale cigarettes. "Of course he will trade. You are his weakness. We saw how he looked at you at the party. He looked like a puppy dog." "He won't trade," I repeated, "because he doesn't negotiate with dead men." The man's smile faltered. He straightened up. "You have a big mouth for a little girl." He sneered. Maybe I should cut it off. He pulled a knife from his belt. It was a long, serrated blade. He ran his thumb along the edge. He took a step toward me. The building shook. It wasn't a figure of speech. The floor actually vibrated beneath my feet. A low, booming sound echoed from outside like thunder rolling across the earth. The Russians stopped laughing. They looked at the door. "What was that?" one of them asked. The man with the knife frowned. He looked at his watch. "Go check the perimeter," he ordered. Two men grabbed their rifles and headed for the door. They opened it. They didn't get out. 2 shots rang out. Pop, pop. The sounds were crisp and efficient. The 2 men fell backward. They hit the concrete floor with heavy, wet thuds. Blood pooled around their heads instantly. The man with the knife froze. He stared at the open door. A shadow fell across the threshold. Dante stepped into the room. He looked like a nightmare. His black t-shirt was soaked with sweat and fresh blood. His face was a mask of cold fury. He held a gun in each hand. He didn't look like a man. He looked like a machine built for slaughter. He stepped over the bodies. He didn't even look down. His eyes locked on the man with the knife. "Put it down," Dante said. His voice was not loud. It was terrifyingly calm. The Russian man grabbed me. It happened so fast I couldn't react. He lunged behind my chair. He wrapped his arm around my neck. He pressed the knife to my throat. The cold steel bit into my skin. "Drop the guns!" the Russian screamed. "Drop them or I slice her open!" Dante stopped. He stood 10 feet away. He looked at me. His eyes swept over my face. He checked for injuries. He saw the bruise on my cheek. His pupils dilated. The black swallowed the iris. "Are you hurt?" he asked me. He ignored the man holding the knife to my throat. He spoke only to me. "No," I whispered. The Russian pressed the knife harder. I felt a trickle of warm blood slide down my neck. "I said drop the guns!" the Russian yelled. He was shaking. He was terrified. Dante looked at the knife. Then he looked at the Russian. "If you cut her," Dante said softly, "I will peel your skin off while you are still alive." The Russian's breath hitched in my ear. "Drop them." Dante slowly opened his hands. The guns fell to the floor. Clatter, clatter. "Kick them away," the Russian ordered. Dante kicked them. They slid across the concrete. "Now!" the Russian said, a manic grin spreading across his face. "Now we negotiate." He thought he had won. He thought an unarmed Dante was safe. He was wrong. I felt the Russian shift his weight. He was leaning back, preparing to drag me toward the exit. I remembered what Dante told me. Fear keeps you alive. I didn't wait for Dante to save me. I slammed my head backward. I put every ounce of strength I had into it. The back of my skull collided with the Russian's nose. There was a sickening crunch. The Russian screamed. His grip loosened just for a second. The knife pulled away from my throat. That second was all Dante needed. He moved. He didn't run. He launched himself. He was a blur of violence. He hit the Russian like a freight train. He tackled him away from me. They crashed into the wall. The knife skittered across the floor. Dante didn't reach for it. He didn't need it. He grabbed the Russian by the throat. He lifted him off the ground. He slammed him against the concrete again and again. You touched her. Dante roared. Slam! You touched my wife. Slam! The Russian was limp. He was unconscious. Maybe dead. Dante dropped him. He turned to me. The rage fell off his face instantly. The monster vanished. He was at my side in a heartbeat. He knelt down. His hands were shaking as he pulled the knife from his belt to cut the zip ties. He freed my hands. He cut the tape on my ankles. Elena. He breathed. I tried to stand up, but my legs were numb. I stumbled. He caught me. He pulled me into his arms. He crushed me against his chest. He buried his face in my neck right over the spot where the knife had nicked me. I've got you, he gasped. I've got you. I wrapped my arms around him. I held on tight. He was wet with blood. He smelled like gunpowder and death. But he was warm. He was alive. You came? I sobbed into his shirt. You came for me, always, he said. I will always come for you. He pulled back. He cupped my face with his blood-stained hands. He looked into my eyes. I am sorry, he said. I am so sorry I sent you away. I was stupid. I was scared. I know, I said. I know. He kissed me. It wasn't gentle. It was desperate. It was a kiss that tasted of survival. He kissed me like he needed my breath to fill his own lungs. He pulled away and rested his forehead against mine. Are you okay? He asked. Did they hurt you? Just a headache, I said, and a scratch. He touched the small cut on my neck. His jaw tightened. I should have killed him slower, he muttered. We need to go, I said, looking at the bodies on the floor. More will come. No, he said, standing up and pulling me with him. No more are coming. They are all dead, Elena. I burned the whole place down on my way in. He looked at the door. Matteo is outside with the car. He scooped me up. He lifted me into his arms like I weighed nothing. I can walk. I protested weakly. Not today, he said. Today I carry you. He walked us out of the room. He stepped over the bodies. He walked down the hallway that was littered with debris and smoke. We walked out into the cool night air. Matteo was waiting by the black car. He looked relieved. He opened the back door. Dante climbed in with me. He didn't put me down on the seat. He kept me on his lap. He wrapped his arms around me, burying me in his warmth. Home, Dante said to Matteo. The car sped away. I rested my head on Dante's shoulder. I watched the city lights blur past. I was safe. But I knew things had changed. I looked at Dante's face. He was staring out the window, watching for threats. His hand was gripping my thigh possessively. He wasn't going to let me go again. And this time I wasn't going to leave. We were marked. Both of us. We were at war. But at least we were together. Dante? I whispered. He looked down at me. Yes, Bella? Don't ever lie to me again. Don't ever tell me you are bored. He tightened his grip. Never, he promised. You are the only thing that keeps me interested in being alive. I closed my eyes. Let the Russians come. Let the world burn. I was exactly where I belonged.
Chapter 18. Dante. The adrenaline was leaving my body. It was draining out of me like water from a cracked glass. And as it left, the pain rushed in to fill the empty space. My side was screaming. I knew I had ripped the stitches. I could feel the warm wetness of my own blood soaking into my shirt, mixing with the blood of the men I had just killed. My knuckles were throbbing, my head was pounding, but I did not care. I looked down at the woman in my lap. Elena was curled against my chest. Her eyes were closed. Her breathing was steady. She was gripping my shirt so hard her knuckles were white. She was alive. I ran my hand over her hair. It smelled like smoke and the rusty scent of that warehouse, but underneath that, it still smelled like vanilla. It still smelled like her. Matteo was driving fast. He was weaving through traffic, taking corners sharp. He knew we needed to get home. He knew I was running on fumes. We pulled up to the Valenti Tower. The security was tight. There were twice as many guards as usual. They were armed with rifles. They looked ready for a siege. Good. Let the world try to take her again. They would have to climb over a mountain of bodies to get to the front door. The car stopped. Matteo jumped out and opened the back door. I went to lift Elena. "I can walk," she mumbled into my chest. "You are hurt, Dante. Put me down." I ignored her. I shifted her weight, trying not to grimace as my side pulled. I stepped out of the car. I carried her through the lobby. The guards snapped to attention. They saw the blood on my clothes. They saw the bruise on my wife's face. They didn't say a word. They just opened the doors and stepped aside. We rode the elevator in silence. The mirrors reflected a horror show. Two people covered in grime and blood holding on to each other like it was the end of the world. Maybe it was. The old world was gone. The world where I was just a businessman and she was just a librarian was dead. This was the new world. The war world. The doors opened. I carried her into the penthouse. I walked straight to the bathroom. I set her down on the vanity counter. She wobbled a little, then steadied herself. She looked at me. Her eyes were wide and dark. She reached out and touched my side. "You are bleeding again," she whispered. "It is fine," I said. "It is not fine. You ripped them open." "I don't care about the stitches, Elena," I said, taking her face in my hands. "I care about you." I tilted her head to the side. I looked at the cut on her neck. It was thin, a red line against her pale skin. It wasn't deep. It would heal. But the bruise on her cheek was getting darker. I brushed my thumb over it. "I should have made him suffer more," I growled. "He is dead, Dante," she said softly. "You cannot kill him twice. I can try." She covered my hand with hers. She pressed her palm against my cheek. "Stop," she said. "Come back to me. The monster has done his job. I need my husband now." The word broke me. Husband. I leaned my forehead against hers. I closed my eyes. I breathed her in. "Okay," I whispered. "I am here." I pulled back. I turned on the shower. I made it hot. Steam started to fill the room. "Strip," I said gently. She let me undress her. I peeled the ruined red dress off her body. I threw it in the trash. I never wanted to see it again. It was the dress I sent her away in. It was bad luck. I took off my clothes. My shirt stuck to my wound, but I peeled it off with a grunt. We stepped into the shower. The water was hot. It stung my cuts. It washed the blood away, swirling pink down the drain. I picked up the soap. I lathered it in my hands. I washed her. I washed her hair. I massaged her scalp, trying to wash away the memory of the Russian's hands. I washed her shoulders. I washed her arms. I washed her soft curves. She stood still and let me do it. She was trembling slightly. I washed her feet. I knelt down on the tiled floor, ignoring the pain in my knees. I scrubbed the dirt from her skin. When I stood back up, she was crying. Silent tears mixed with the shower water. "Why are you crying?" I asked, wiping her face. "Because you came back," she sobbed. "Because you are here washing my feet like I am something precious." "You are precious," I said fiercely. "You are the most precious thing I have ever owned. I am not a thing, Dante," she said, grabbing my shoulders. "I am your partner." I froze. "Partner, yes." I agreed. "You are?" I handed her the soap. "Your turn," I said. She washed me. She was gentle. She avoided the wound on my side, washing around it with careful fingers. She washed the blood off my chest. She washed the gun oil off my hands. We stood there under the water for a long time, just holding each other. just existing. When the water ran cold, we got out. I dried her off with a fluffy white towel. I wrapped her in my robe. It swallowed her whole. She looked small and safe. I wrapped a towel around my waist. I need to re-stitch this, I said, looking down at my side. I will do it, she said. No, your hands are shaking. They are steady enough for you, she said stubbornly. We went to the bedroom. I sat on the edge of the bed. She got the kit. She was right. Her hands were shaking at first, but once she held the needle, she steadied them. She bit her lip in concentration. She stitched me up again. This time I didn't flinch. I watched her. I watched the way her brow furrowed. I watched the way she cared for me. She tied the knot and snipped the thread. She taped a fresh bandage over it. Done, she whispered. She put the kit away. She climbed into bed. She pulled the duvet up to her chin. I got in beside her. I turned off the lamp. The room was dark. The city lights were a blur outside. I pulled her into my arms. She fit perfectly against my side. Dante? What happens now? She asked. The Russians. The Russians are done, I said into the dark. I cut off the head of the snake tonight. The rest of them will scramble. They will be too busy fighting each other for power to come after us. And if they do, I tightened my arm around her. If they do, we will be ready. She was quiet for a moment. The money, she said. The $50,000. I left it in the apartment. I laughed. It hurt my ribs, but it felt good. I don't care about the money, Elena. It was a lot of money. I will make it back in an hour, I said. Forget the money. She shifted so she could look at me. Her eyes were adjusting to the dark. I could see the glint of them. You said you were bored, she said. When you sent me away. You said I was cloying. I lied, I said immediately. I told you. I lied to save you. I know, she said. But it still hurt, I know. I pressed a kiss to her forehead. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you. How? I will start by never leaving you alone again, I said. You want to go to the library? I go with you. You want to go grocery shopping? I pushed the cart. You are stuck with me, Elena, every second of every day. She smiled. I could feel it against my skin. That sounds exhausting, she teased. Too bad. You signed the paper, no returns. She sighed happily and snuggled closer. Dante. Yes. I love you. The words hung in the air. I had never said them, not to anyone, not even to Ma. Valentis didn't say I love you. We showed loyalty, we showed possession, we showed blood. But looking at her, feeling her heartbeat against mine, I realized that loyalty wasn't enough. Possession wasn't enough. I love you too, I whispered. It felt strange on my tongue. It felt right. I love you, Elena. I love your mind. I love your body. I love your stubbornness. I love that you stitch me up when I bleed. She kissed my chest right over my heart. Sleep, husband, she murmured. We have a war to win tomorrow. We slept. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't sleeping with one eye open. I was sleeping with my heart open. 6 months later, the library was quiet. I sat in a chair in the corner of the history section. I was reading a book about the Roman Empire. It was interesting, but mostly I was just watching. Elena was shelving books. She was wearing a black dress. It wasn't velvet. It was simple cotton, but it fit her like a glove. She was humming to herself as she worked. She looked happy. She wasn't hiding anymore. She wasn't tugging at her clothes. She moved with confidence. She moved like a woman who knew she was loved. She reached for a book on the top shelf. She stretched up on her tiptoes. The dress rode up her thigh. I felt a spark of heat in my gut. I closed my book. I stood up. I walked over to her. I came up behind her. I wrapped my arms around her waist. I pulled her back against my chest. She didn't jump. She leaned into me. "You are distracting me, Mr. Valenti," she whispered. "I am bored." I murmured against her neck, nipping at the sensitive skin there. She laughed. She turned in my arms. "You are not bored. You are just hungry. Always." I said. I kissed her. It was a slow kiss, a deep kiss, a kiss that said, "You are mine, and I am yours." We heard someone clear their throat. We pulled apart. My mother was standing at the end of the aisle. She was holding a stack of romance novels. "Ma," I said, "what are you doing here?" "I need new books," Ma said. "And I need to tell you that Sunday dinner is at 2. Do not be late, and bring the cannoli." She looked at Elena. She looked at her stomach. "Still nothing?" Ma asked pointedly. Elena blushed. "Not yet, Ma. Keep trying." Ma winked. She marched away. Elena buried her face in my chest. "She is relentless. She wants a legacy," I said. "What do you want?" she asked, looking up at me. I looked around the library. I looked at the dust motes dancing in the light. I looked at the woman in my arms. The war with the Russians had cooled down. We had won. The territory was secure. The debt was a memory. "I have everything I want," I said. I kissed her again. "Let's go home," I said. "But my shift isn't over for another hour." "I bought the library, Elena," I said. "I make the schedule. Shift is over." She rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. "You are impossible. I am yours." We walked out of the library hand in hand. The sun was shining. The city was loud. But I didn't hear the sirens anymore. I didn't hear the threats. I just heard her laugh. And that was the only sound that mattered.